Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Huntersville Council meeting number 4497, the 21st of June 2021. We'll start the meeting. If you could please stand and acknowledgement of country. I would like to show my respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of elders past, present and emerging on which this meeting takes place.
And council prayer. We thank you, Lord, for the honour of being called by our fellow citizens to this office of honour and trust. Give us grace, diligently and honourably, free from private interest or prejudice, to discharge the duties entrusted to us, to the common good, and as in your sight, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
In regards to the order of business, attendance and apologies, I've been advised that Councillor Collins will be joining us, but is running 5 or maybe 10 minutes late. So if that could be just noted when Councillor Collins arrives in the minutes. Declarations of interest for this evening's meeting. Are there any? Recorded without response. Confirmation of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes from previous meetings. The first one is for 4497. Councillor Miles has moved the adoption. Councillor McLaughlin has seconded. No discussion. For those minutes, all those in favour, against, declare it carried unanimously. We now move to the second group of meetings, which relates to the extraordinary meeting that Council held. Just looking for the date of that, the 31st of May. Is there a motion in relation to that matter? Councillor Miles, Councillor Sanderson, any discussion about those minutes? If not, put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare it carried. Welcome, Councillor Collins.
Thank you.
Yep.
Nice to be here.
Good. Could that be noted that Councillor Collins is present? Move to the first item on the business agenda, and 2.1, which is one of the pleasures of being mayor, is to be able to acknowledge extraordinary service of our citizens. And it occurred at the Queen's birthday honours, in which 2 of our citizens have been acknowledged for their service. And I'll just read out the report so that it goes into the record. On the 14th of June 2021, the Governor-General and the Chancellor of the Order of Australia, His Excellency General, the Honourable David John Hurley, ACDC DSC retired, recognised 947 Australians in the Queen's Birthday 2021 honours list. Honoured under the Medal of OAM, the Order of Australia, in the General Division were 2 of our local residents. Mr. Matthew James Thean, for a significant service to the community through a range of roles, including but not limited to the Edmund Rice Foundation, Indigenous Mentor, St Ignace College, organiser Beyond Bitumen Annual Rally, Beyond Blue, Parish Council Chair of the Holy Name of Mary Parish, Hunters Hill. The second recipient is Dr. Richard Maxwell Zuber, and many have probably used his services at the local vet, for the significant service to veterinary science, to professional colleges and to education. Although we get to fondly refer to Max as our local vet, Max has made significant contribution to the veterinary science and education through the Australian Veterinary Boards Council, Australasian Association of Veterinary Diagnostic Imagery, Australian and New Zealand College of Veterinary Scientists, and the University of Sydney faculty. We congratulate both Mr. Thean and Mr. Zuber and thank them for their contribution to our community. And for more details attached to the website are their more complete bios. I'd like to move that the report received and noted and that a letter of congratulation be forwarded to both those recipients. As seconder, I've moved it. Second, Councillor Miles. Any discussion? Put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. That now brings us to the next item on the business paper, which is 3.1, which is a notice of motion from Councillor Collins. Do you wish to move that?
Yeah, we're not going to do one for speakers. Moving forward.
Not for 3.1.
No, not for 3.1. Okay, cool. All right, that's fine. I'll
No
move it.
speakers for that. So you've moved, Councillor Collins has moved the motion. Is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor Miles. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I'll just speak briefly. Look, this has come out of what was given to us late last year through a motion. It is information that relates to the state of our footpaths and our roads and curbs and gutters, but it's information that hasn't previously been made public. And what it does is it shows at 20-metre intervals all the footpath defects in Hunters Hill. It's a big issue for a lot of people, and I think by releasing this information, making it public, it's a great opportunity for everybody to understand, you know, the state of our assets and what we've got coming up ahead of us. It's pretty straightforward. I can't imagine why anyone would want to keep this information secret from the public. It should be public. The assets belong to the public, and if it's a report on our assets, then it should be made public. So I would imagine it's a pretty straightforward supported motion. I think that if anyone were inclined to not support it, then they should probably state their reasons why now. Otherwise, I look forward to a unanimous consensus on this.
Are there any speakers against the motion? Councillor Sanderson.
Oh, I don't want to speak at this point, Mr. Mayor. If I could ask some questions through you to the General Manager.
Yes, Councillor Sanderson.
I wonder whether the General Manager could advise councillors about if there's any expense to this matter, whether there are any technical problems with dealing with this issue, and whether there are any reasons why we should not proceed with this proposal.
Mr. Acting General Manager, could you please help?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. I'll just remind councillors that we do actually have information on our website at the moment, and excuse me for reading, but we're still learning a few of these things. The Digital Asset Management Plan Summary, and includes quite a lot of information. The information that Councillor Collins refers to is this footpath network information. For it to make any sense, I think there's quite a bit of work for us to do to actually get it onto our website in a form that actually people can understand. So it will take considerable resources to actually convert that. We've had a discussion with the company who's generated this information, and they feel that they need to, there's a bit of cleansing that needs to be done and to make it a more readable document. So there may well need to be some resourcing through the external source to get it up on the website as well. So we probably need to take it on notice and come back to you with just how long it would take and how we'd actually do it.
Is there any further discussion? Yes. Have you finished your questions?
Well, I wonder whether I have a supplementary question to
You can have a supplement, and then Councillor Miles.
I just wondered whether it would be appropriate for General Manager to prepare a report as to whether we should continue, if we are considering going ahead with this, should we get a report from the General Manager, whether we'd like to do such a report before proceed.
I'm happy to prepare a report, but that's up to councillors whether they'd like to report or not.
Thank you. Councillor Miles, you wish to speak for the
Just
motion?
ask a question.
Ask a question.
Through you to the acting general manager, just in relation to the amending of the data set that we have been given access to as councillors. You're saying that you'd envisage that the documents in their current form couldn't be published as a static on the website, or would you see that it have to be something that's interactive?
I'm not sure they make, councillor, I'm not sure they make a lot of sense without some explanation to go with them.
Yeah. And
that's the conversation we've had with the consultants. You would like to add anything to that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, for me. Yeah, I talked to the people who produced the documents, and they were a little bit concerned with the actual depth that it's gone to without any explanation. So they suggested that we do look to, if we're going to put it up there, that we give a little bit more detail around what it all means. Otherwise, it can lead to quite a few questions, and we'll take a bit of resource to respond to those as we go. In terms of whether it's static or whether it's a dynamic document, obviously our overall platform is dynamic, but these documents that you've referred to, they're more of a static document. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Cresswell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. I'm just wondering what other, because I know when we came onto council, we talked a lot about communications, and so council have done a lot to keep the community informed about what roadworks are coming, and we've all been briefed on this service standards around roads and footpaths, etc. So I'm just curious what someone in the community who is curious about these things, what they can currently find on our website, or if they call council to ask what is available to the community.
Mr. Acting General Manager, assist, please.
I'm past to infrastructure services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So at the moment, we've got on, as part of the exhibition that's out there at the moment, in the asset management plan, we have the digital asset management plan summary pages. On there, it shows the 4 scenarios that were modelled. It shows roads, footpaths, curb and gutter buildings, marine structures, open space, stormwater pits and pipes. And it goes into the 4 different graphs and plans that it shows. The current state of the assets, so it shows the quantity of the assets, the overall condition, the dollars per condition state, so value of in condition 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And the percent of the condition distribution, so how many assets are in each of the different areas. It shows the investment strategy, so the initial and final average condition, the initial backlog, the final backlog, change in backlog, the capital cost over the time of the plan, and the total strategy cost. The third one is the network condition distribution map. So it shows on a map, actually a coloured map that shows green might be condition 3, red condition 4, and shows where they are across the area. And similarly, it has a 10-year capital works program mapped out as well, which shows where works will happen. It doesn't go into the detail of exactly what those works are, though.
Question. And that, when you're talking about the red and the green, you're talking an average, which would get rid of the defects, right?
Yes, average condition. Yeah.
Is there any further debate?
Oh, right of reply.
No. Well, is there any? No, there's no further debate. Right of reply.
What I've listed here is 3 documents that I've seen, and I've listed the documents exactly as they are. Now, if we're being told that the public can't have this unless they have an explanation or a, to me, I was given the information. Everyone here has the information. This is about transparency. Now, if somebody doesn't, if they get this footpath information, they can't understand it or don't understand it, then they can ask the question. They can ask me, they can ask council. We can put up an explanation of what this is. It's pretty easy to explain what it is. It's a defect map at every 20 metres in all of Hunters Hill, and it'll show you every area where there's a cracked footpath below a certain standard. It is actually quite straightforward if you look at it. Now, what is not easy to understand is the averaging. It's the method that they give you to show you the averaging out of all these defects, which actually ends up with you've got 50% of a road that is 1 out of 5, and 50% of the road, which is brand new and 5 out of 5, then that's considered average. And so nothing needs to be done, which means that there's no public information to show that half a road could have, it could be caved in. And yet if the other half is brand new, on average, it's satisfactory. So I cannot understand why people are trying to hide this information and keep it secret. It is 3 documents. I've seen it. If you've seen what I've seen, you'd know what I know. And I think it's important for everybody in Hunters Hill to know exactly what the state of our assets are. And no one wants to show it to you. For anybody watching, no one wants to show it. It has been hidden. I had to fight tooth and nail to get it. I accidentally saw it once at a briefing, which no one else was able to attend. And I had 12 people there trying to explain to me what it was, but it's actually very straightforward. It is simply the outcome of the asset analysis that's been undertaken. And anybody that thinks everything's okay, the footpaths are fine, the roads are all good, well, see this document and then tell me that that's what you think. But if anybody here of these councillors believe in transparency and open government, we should not let these continue to be secret, because that's what they are. They are not to the public. And if this gets voted down, I would encourage anybody, you now have the name of the document to make a freedom of information request. I will be doing the same on behalf of the community. Either way, this information has to come out. It does not belong to council. It belongs to the community. These assets belong to the community and they need to see exactly what's going on. So I would remind all councillors that to keep this information secret is keeping a big secret from the community.
That now concludes debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. Move to item 3.2, which has a number of speakers for that item. So before we get to the motion, we'll hear the speakers first. The first speaker is Mrs. Dowsett, and that's to be read out by a staff member.
Objection to the motion at item 3.2. I object strenuously to the proposal to extricate 100,000 from the federal government's round 3 of the local roads and community infrastructure program for the sports community facility at Boronia Park. I find no equity in yet another attempt to swing across more public funds to this project, particularly when there is a state of presumably genuine commitment from the Hunters Hill Rugby Union Club that they will find an additional funds required to construct the facility to their own choice and size. How can it be justified that this sports project is once more being given premium priority by Councillor Miles and also by Councillor Collins, who recently lamented that council was staring down the fiscal abyss and had insufficient funds to cater for the basic needs of our municipality. And now they want to remove money from the program specifically dedicated to providing those needs. If indeed Mr. Councillor Collins is incorrect and our footpaths and roads do have all the funding required, then the funds should be allocated to commencing the restoration of the Heritage Grandstand, which missed out on the intended 1 million SCF granted funding, and for which astonishingly community groups have been advised by council to seek heritage grant funds themselves. Can council also explain why in item 4.1, the budget document included restoration works on the Boronia Grandstand as a project within the current delivery program, but in fact this matter is only found on page 57 referred to under footpath renewal program 104,460 with no further detail provided. This is ambiguous and requires clarity around how this expenditure connects to a commitment to restore the grandstand. Council needs to finally step up on its duty of care to this heritage item.
Thank you. While you're there, I think the next item is read out as well, and that's from Mr. Peter McFarlane.
The sporting clubs of Boronia Park have made great progress in securing funds for the Boronia Park Sports and Community Facility. We continue to pursue funding from many sources, accumulated club funds, our council membership base, members of the broader community, grant funding from our peak supporting bodies and federal and state government. Our ability to provide a full tax donation for all donations has been substantially uptaken from the Hunters Hill community, with many donations and pledges being received. And we expect a significant increase over the coming days as we push up against the end of financial year. There has been enthusiastic interest for the project from a surprisingly large number of residents who, although may not have direct connection with the club, understand the need for the facilities such as ours in our community and the benefits it will bring. We can also report a considerable grant allocation from state and federal arms of one of our sporting administrative organisations. Details are yet to be made public. Fundraising is never easy. It calls for every possible avenue to be explored, every stone turned. Tonight's motion to allocate a portion of the federal funding from the LRNC infrastructure program to the facility at Bronte Park would be a most welcome help to achieve our goal. I thank councillors for their ongoing support of this project. Peter McFarlane, Vice President of the Hunters Hill Rugby Union.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Dr. Alistair Sharp, who's present this evening. If you'd like to come to the rostrum there, in 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Hunters Hill Trust in opposition to the motion for 4 reasons. Council made a firm commitment to not commit to funding, to commit any funding to this facility. The document on council letterhead circulated by Neil Strickland in December gives an unambiguous assurance, and I'm quoting, the construction of the proposed sports and community facility will be managed by council and funded entirely through grants secured by the rugby club, committed funds from the club savings and contributions from club members and other members who wish to contribute. That, if council is going to give money to this, that is going back on a totally unambiguous commitment. Second one, the motion proposes to devote more than half of the roads and infrastructure funding to a project which is already funded. Council's architect is designing a building to suit the budget agreed with the rugby club, having increased their contribution to allow for a larger building. Should the club fail to raise this level of funding, the design can be downsized. Now, the guidelines for this grant are not yet available online, so I'm assuming that they will be similar to those for phase 2. I'm not sure how Councillor Miles was able to obtain the funding yet, because we had communication from Trent Zimmerman recently, and he only quoted the phase 2 guidelines. The guidelines state that projects to be funded must be generally accessible to the public at large. And it emphasises this by saying areas that are open to all members of the public, such as parks, playgrounds, footpaths and roads. The facility doesn't meet this definition, since only the toilets will be accessible to the public at large. And finally, the obvious use for these funds, 183,000, I believe, is to upgrade the many neglected footpaths, since they're aimed at roads and footpaths in part. If the footpaths are otherwise funded, and I'd be pleased because I trip over when I'm walking my dog every evening, the guidelines suggest that funds could be used for the construction, maintenance and or improvements to council-owned assets, including natural assets that are generally accessible to the public. Now, the plan of management for Bronte Park, quite apart from the facility, has a whole series of projects rated of high priority and as yet still untouched by council. So those are my reasons. Therefore, I think that each of them is sufficient reason to condemn this motion, and I ask you to reject.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Dr. Sharp? If not, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. We now move to the motion, and Councillor Miles has moved a notice of motion 3.2. Do you wish to move it?
Yes.
Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Collins. Yes, Councillor Miles.
For the benefit of the gallery, I'll read out the motion. The Hunters Hill Council allocate $100,000 out of the federal government funds supplied in round 3 of the Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program, LRCIP, to the community facility at Bronte Park. And that number 2, the council write to the federal member, Trent Zimmerman, and thank him for the $185,870 that was allocated to Hunters Hill Council in round 3 of the LRCIP, and to make him aware of the commitment of the portion of the funds to Bronte Park Community Facility. For context, Mr. Mayor, the round 3 of this program was released in the recent federal budget papers. the allocation to Hunters Hill Council for this program was about $185,000. I have had conversations with Trent in which he lamented partly that the round 2 funding was spent almost entirely in Hunters Hill Council to fix roads and footpaths where that may be appropriate for portions of the funds, but this is also a community infrastructure grant. And I have here Trent's most recent newsletter. I'll read a portion of the newsletter here. New sports facilities for Tantallon Oval in Lane Cove. Lane Cove Council will be utilising $450,000 of the increased federal government funding for the new Sports Pavilion at Tantallon Oval in Lane Cove. That's this program here. The new pavilion will replace the existing ageing grandstand and will include a community room, new change rooms for both men and women, a kiosk, better storage, a viewing area for the Oval. This will be a huge benefit to our local rugby and cricket players as well as other users. Works are due to be finished later this year. That's in Trent's newsletter. That sounds remarkably similar to the project that we're undertaking in Boronia Park. A portion of these funds obviously is for roads and community infrastructure. It is for footpaths, and you know, as we've heard, we do have sufficient backlog in our roads and footpaths to warrant us spending a large sum of the funds that are available in that area. We've spent, to the best of my knowledge, most of the funds in rounds 1 and 2 on roads and footpaths. What we're talking about here is committing a portion of the round 3 funding to a facility that will, in its entirety, be owned by this council. I have lamented in the past that we have not made a contribution. This is not council funding. This is not budgeted council funding. This is funding that we are receiving through the federal government, and doesn't make up a portion of our revenues year on year. So this is funding that is allocated to us from the federal government to provide roads and community infrastructure programs that are shovel ready as part of the stimulus package around COVID-19. So I think it's entirely appropriate that this funding go into something like Boronia Park Community Facility. If it goes into initiatives that have been agreed to with the architect and the clubs to make the building more sustainable, then that's fantastic. But at the end of the day, the closer we get to reaching that fundraising goal, the quicker we can get this thing out of the ground and shovel ready. So I commit this motion to the council, and I think we should get on and approve it.
Is there any debate? Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, I can't support this motion, and it's just for 2 really simple points, really, and that is that it's simply too early for this council to be intervening. We're not shovel ready. We're not. We're diverting funds to a project that doesn't have a costing yet. It hasn't been finalised. It hasn't been sent to tender. To send money now is what message does it send? If we are going to, if and when it happens that we need to consider contributing, then we consult with our community about whether or not we do it. And that's the first reason, is that it's simply not ready. And in terms of shovel-ready projects that this could be allocated to, you have spent countless column inches talking about our footpaths and roads. You've put motions to council about how Boronia Park is needing some traffic calming, how Henley is in need of some traffic calming. Our federal member has given us, and kindly given us, some local roads grants, and we can use this immediately to address some of those issues. And to divert this money from those traffic calming measures that it could pay for, then it just doesn't make any sense. I know it's not a particularly glamorous project, none of these projects are very glamorous, and it would be great to have specific projects that Trent can turn to when he wants to put something like that out. But at the end of the day, this money helps this council get some very good outcomes for the whole community, and that's why I can't support it. The facility to date has already been given $1.5 million in government funding, of which 500 has come from our federal member to date. And Mr. McFarlane has indicated that we might be on track to receive even more funding, which is fantastic. But we don't know how much we're going to get. So until we do have all of that, then we can't consider giving any funds to this project. I would also point out that as councillors, we have an obligation to manage finances for the benefit of all of this community. And when we receive this local roads grant, and we can use it for footpaths, we should be using it for footpaths and for roads and for associated infrastructure. So in my view, there is adequate grant funding already allocated to this project at this point, specific grant funding, and there may be more coming. This council continues to contribute tangibly to this project, not necessarily financially, but we have contributed in kind through our staff, through our resources. We've been fully supportive of this project all the way through. So to say that we haven't contributed is simply not right. We have contributed and we continue to contribute, and we will contribute because we will be responsible for the care and maintenance of this building moving forward. So we will be contributing. So I just can't support it. I think it needs to go into some of those projects that we have talked about in our briefings. And I think if and when it comes a point where this council needs to intervene, then we will bring a motion, and a motion should be brought at that point.
Thank you. Are there any speakers for the motion? Councillor Collins.
Well, first of all, it's not a road grant, it's a community infrastructure program, and that includes roads and also community facilities. So it is well within the scope of what it's intended for. And as Councillor Miles has shown, that pretty much every other council has built some community facilities rather than just catching up their backlog of footpaths. Now, if the money comes in, then we allocate it somewhere, and that's the idea that it is too early. That's just simply not true, because we allocate that money when it comes in. Do we already have, for you, Mr. Mayor, General Manager, do we already have the money?
Mr. General Manager.
No, it's not in the budget, and we haven't received the cash yet. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it's on the budget, we haven't received cash. So if the money comes in after budget, then if we have it already allocated somewhere, then that's where it goes. It is not too early to decide what we're going to do with it. Now, as for this not benefiting the whole community, that's a little bit misleading, because really not everything we do is going to impact every single person. You fix someone's footpath, it's not going to affect everybody else's. This is $100,000. I mean, council spent what was it, $40,000 on an art consultant a couple of years ago? Is that right? Was it $40,000? Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McLaughlin.
How much? You're telling the story.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you're chair of the art committee. They're the ones that.
Councillor
Yeah,
Collins,
okay.
that's something that is not expected to be able to be answered. So please get on.
Okay, well, if anybody, maybe you can answer that question on those.
Clarify something I said to you.
So when you
Finish, I just to clarify.
Yeah, question on those. Can we find that out? How much was spent on an art consultant behind the hill, and put that in the questions without notice? Or questions without notice, please, for next week's business paper. Now,
could you submit that at the end of the meeting, please, so it's on record?
sure, I can submit that. Now, yeah, really, we have not spent anything on this. We are the only council that is basically going to, is expecting to have a fully paid for community facility without even chipping in a cent. And that's just ridiculous. Now, putting aside whether or not you support the facility in itself, and that's a separate argument. It's been decided that it's going to go ahead. In what form, that's up to the independent panel. But we have decided that that's going to go ahead. So It is simply about making a contribution to community facility that we're going to own. And it's coming from the federal government. And, you know, I think that Hunters Hill Council needs to do a better job of actually spending the grants that it's given. It hasn't traditionally done that very well. I think every grant we've received over the last few years, we've had, you know, them being chased up because we're not actually doing anything with them. So I think this is about showing the federal government and the state government that, you know what, we are committed to actually building better facilities for our community. And it's only $100,000. And I think it's a very good idea.
Mr. Acting General Manager, do you wish to clarify?
Yeah,
a point?
through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry, councillors. We have actually included the $185,870 in the revised budget we've brought back to you tonight, because we now know about it. So that's part of the reporting back on the exhibition period. At this stage, it's been allocated to footpaths. That said, it still needs to be a formal report go to council with priorities and how you'd actually allocate that money. I'm not saying it's definitely footpaths. My opinion is it needs to be come back as the whole package of what needs to be done in Hunters Hill. And every day I'm getting emails from people telling me there's major infrastructure things that they've been talking to us about for some time that I need to get my head around to see what are the priorities, so I can bring that back to council with an associated report.
So
thank you.
Has it been a question for you? Has it been, so it's just been allocated just to general footpaths?
Correct, just to get it into the system.
Okay, but if we were to
if you have the motion successful tonight, then the 100,000 would be moved to the facility.
okay, with that new information, if you mind, if I can just finish.
No, you've finished speaking.
Well, I was given the wrong information, Mr. Mayor, so I'd like the exemption to actually state another fact.
One
because I
fact,
was
yes.
thinking-
Well,
Yeah, okay. So we do have it in the budget tonight. So if we are going to do it, it is not too early. If we don't do it tonight, then it's too late. So that's all I have to say.
right. Any further debate? Yes, Councillor Krasoy.
Just a question through you, Mr. Mayor, because I'd like to understand it a little more, because we haven't been briefed about this latest round of funding. In fact, we didn't know about it till the business paper came out. But through you, Mr. Mayor, is this the sort of funding, for example, that could fund the safety improvements that we need at Baronial Park, for example? I'm just curious.
Yes, it could.
So
Mr. Acting General Manager.
and just clarify the safety improvements, you're talking about the traffic or the
Traffic.
The
traffic management?
pedestrian safety.
Pedestrian safety,
Baronial Park,
you could upgrade playgrounds, you can upgrade footpaths. It's as it says, it's quite a broad remit, and it needs to be spent within the 12 months because it's all part of this stimulus type package.
So, for example, a project like the pedestrian safety project at Baronial Park that's come back to council a few times that we haven't had the budget to work on, that we're currently doing safety audits for, etc. For example, a project like that, this money could go towards.
I believe so. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct.
And another one for you,
Yes.
Mr. Apologies. Is the Baronial Park Clubhouse project shovel ready?
Mr. Acting General Manager.
I would say it's not shovel ready. It's ready to be lodged as a development application. I'm meeting with the clubs tomorrow to talk about where funding's up to, so I can get my head around that and then understand what needs to be done to get it shovel ready. And once that DA is approved, in the meantime, we need to shortlist for builders and then go to tender. And once that once we've got the DA approved and we've got the plans ready for the builders to quote on, then it's shovel ready.
So we don't know what it's going to cost yet.
Yeah,
No,
it's not shovel ready.
We've got a QS report to be done as soon as we receive the final plans within the next week.
Thank you.
Is there any further debate? Speakers? Yes, Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have grave concerns about the idea of donating $100,000 effectively to the rugby club, because the rugby club is effectively committed to raise the rest of those funds. I support rugby. I've played more games of rugby than any other councillor, I'm sure.
That's not true. Sorry, that's not true.
Councillor Collins, please be quiet.
You don't know how many.
No,
games
Councillor
rugby I've played.
Councillor Collins, Councillor
Far more
Sanderson,
than you.
Councillor Collins, Councillor Sanderson has the floor. Councillor Sanderson.
don't understand the point in any case, but if I could continue, there is an arrangement with the club over the raising the funds, and I don't see the need at this stage. If you're going to make a decision like this, it should come far later in the process. The other thing that concerns me about it would be no strings attached, as it says in this motion. There has been some discussion that if it were necessary to put something in terms of making the place more sustainable in terms of solar panels or whatever the processes it would be, you might consider, but again, in a much later stage. The motion is way too premature. On the other side, I agree with all of the speakers who have spoken against tonight. I think it would be quite wrong put what is more than half of this allocation fund to a single item that's enjoyed by a small number of the community, as opposed to the safety and that's important on our footpaths. So I would endorse the allocation of these funds to footpaths rather than to this sporting facility.
Is there any further debate? Right of reply, Councillor Miles.
Based on our timeline that's been adopted on this project, and I'm pretty sure without a QS we can be assured that it's going to cost more than $100,000 to build. We should be digging ground by early next year, by early to mid next year, based on our adopted timeline. There should be a shovel-ready project by then. Councillor Sanderson says that we shouldn't allocate the majority of these funds to a single project. We did that with the last round of funding to a traffic island on Manning Road. For good or ill, needed to happen. That was a dangerous intersection. The core point is we shouldn't be relying on one-off funding to fix our roads and footpaths and make them safe for the community. Council should have the capacity to do the improvements that it needs to do to its roads and footpaths without relying on federal funding during a third round of COVID stimulus packages. So, you know, the idea that we have an ailing system of infrastructure, roads and footpaths, and we're desperate for this funding is not a good thing. It's a bad thing. We've talked for many years about the state of the roads and footpaths. We've passed a motion tonight that will lift the lid on a lot of the states of the roads and footpaths that we have in our system. I'm not saying that we allocate all of our funding to this project. I'm saying that we make a contribution, which I think for a building that will be owned and of the benefit of this council and the broader community is not a strange thing to ask for. $100,000 towards the end goal of providing this facility to the community is not a big contribution. It's like 3% of the contribution that we need to get this thing built. So I get that we've given some of our time and resources, but we really do need skin in the game with this community facility because we're the end beneficiary and the community is the end beneficiary. I'm not saying don't use the balance of the funds on roads and footpath improvements. We've used round 2 and round 1 on just that. The balance of this round will be used for just that. I'm just suggesting that where the federal member has raised these funds for projects very similarly in other councils that have been used for almost the identical type of project, that it is not an inappropriate use of those funds to go into community infrastructure. It's in the name of the program. So I'd ask councillors to reconsider their position on this because as Councillor Collins pointed it out, this is into the roads and footpaths budget tonight, if this is not passed. And then we may be trying to fund some contribution to the club out of general revenues or out of other things. But this funding goes into roads and footpaths as of 3 items time. So I'd ask councillors to consider that when they're making their decision this evening.
That now closes debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it lost. We now move to item 4.1. Is there a motion in relation to this? Councillor Sampson, is there a seconder? 4.1, which is the council's financial sustainability. The purpose is the operational plan and includes the budget and longer term financial. So is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor McLaughlin, do you wish to speak to your motion? Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll speak briefly. The documents we're adopting tonight are one of the best good news stories out of this council. I've never seen such a clear plan set out for the future sustainability of this council. Provides alternatives for the next council in terms of options for how it funds. At this point in time, we are funding funding for full asset replacement of assets when they come due. We don't even know whether the community will accept a lower standard. They may well do. So this could put us in a very strong position in 10 years' time if the fourth option is accepted. I know there will be some criticism of it. It may still have some minor errors here that we have not picked up, but I see that it's no justification for not adopting this budget, which I see as one of the most thorough documents that this council has ever produced. And I certainly commend the work that's gone into it. And at every point that I've looked at, I'm satisfied it's at its value.
Any further debate? Yes, Councillor Miles.
Well, I'll give you the good news. The good news is $1.145 million deficit this year and a deficit every year for the next 10 years. The good news is that with not improving service standards one iota, council in this document is preparing to raise rates 17.5%. Good news. Good news. No service gets delivered at any higher rate than it is under a 17.5% rate increase, just to make sure that we fund the deficits that we're going to be projected to deliver over the next 10 years. Good news. Good news that you think that the council's going to seriously go out to the community and say that maybe this will be okay, because even though we raise the rate 17.5% to meet the current standards, we might get the community to agree to dropping the service standards that they have come to expect from council. Good news. This is a wake-up call, council. This is 10 to 20 years of bad financial decision-making from this council. I commend the staff on the documentation. It's fantastic. It has been laid out more clearly in this document that I've ever seen it in my 9 years on council, but it is certainly not good news. And it is not the fault of staff that it's not good news. It's the fault of successive councils not to make tough political decisions to make sure that this budget isn't in the state that it is. 10 years of projected deficits, anywhere between $2.5 million and $500,000. This is an atrocious budget position to be in. How anyone could suggest that this is good news is beyond me. Council has rejected several proposals to try and deliver better budget results. Under these proposals, which the staff have had to clamber to get together because some of those decisions have been made, I don't see how we're going to avoid increasing rates. But you've got to understand that on the higher scale, in order to meet the current service standards and not deliver budget deficits. We're talking about an additional 17.5% rate increase. That is not good news. It's atrocious news. Council needs to make some tough political decisions to make this council more viable. That can absolutely happen. This council hasn't done that, and I hope a future council will.
Before we go any further, the acting general manager wanted to add something into the recommendation.
Councillors, just in light of the previous motion, whether we should be including, let's get to the recommendations. They are there. That thing will be a point 6. Yeah, point 6. That we actually bring back a further report on the distribution of the $186,000, noting that's in the budget, but bring it back on how it can be distributed over all the asset classes. Yeah, putting it straight to footpaths, really, that does need further debate. So I think that's probably a fair and reasonable thing to do in relation to that.
Is the mover of the motion happy to accept that? The seconder is, so that's included in the motion. Any speakers further in relation to the matter?
Just
Yes,
question
Councillor
through you, Mr.
Cresswell.
Mayor. I'm just curious what tough political decision we need to make.
About adopting the property strategy.
Is that political?
Wait. Let's not have chatter across. That's a rhetorical question. I can't
No,
answer.
I'm asking, Mr. Mayor, because it was
Okay.
just said several times that we need to make tough political decisions. So I'm just curious what the political decision is that we need to make.
Dear Councillor Miles, can you help with that, please?
To me or to staff?
Mayor will-
No, I've asked you to answer it. It's a question to you. You made the statement.
As a political body, the tough political decision making that we should have made is things like not delaying the library move for 12 months to a committee. It would be adopting the property strategy so that the low-hanging fruit of remnant lands that residents that have adjoining remnant lands are beating our door down to engage with council on was adopted, stamped, and would be being delivered right now.
Okay, so
It would be.
So you're talking strategic decisions, not political, but.
This is a political body, and it makes decisions.
Okay,
Political
right,
decisions.
that's enough
Yeah.
discussion about that. Is there any further debate in relation to the matter?
Unless Councillor Cresswell is actually going to say something, I'll speak to it. Were you going to speak or?
No, just
No,
a question.
just-
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Collins wishes to speak.
Okay,
on the motion.
I'll, actually, I've got a question first. But may, through you, Mayor, to the General Manager. The councillor fees are supposed to be frozen, and that wasn't in the document. So can that be updated? It was frozen for 5 years by motion of council at the last budget meeting. Overall. Okay, yeah, it's not, no.
But I wasn't aware of that motion, but comments to that?
So I believe Councillor Collins is referring to the motion back in March or April where we reallocated a portion of funds to asset maintenance, which we did do. So that community survey did go across, and what we take that resolution to be the existing resolution. So the fees and charges for councillors aren't in the published fees and charges because that's what we charge the community, but it's reflected in our budget.
They're going up year by year. Metal fee and the maintenance fee, they're going up. It's supposed to be flat for 5 years. I wanted 10, but Councillor Cresswell ended on 5.
Councillor Collins, please.
You want it
I'm
to
just
read.
trying to refresh the memory.
No, the staff.
Councillors,
Acting General
can I take that on board?
Yeah, we'll take that on
If there is
notice.
a saving to be made, it'll come up in the first quarterly review.
Thank you. One other question is relating to the parking fees. Is there a reason why they've jumped up so much?
Mr. Acting General Manager, you're able to.
Sorry, in the budget. So basically, it's gone from I think 200,000 to 440,000 for parking fines. I'm just wondering if that's a parking fines and costs have gone from it used to be what two.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it's the fact that we're actually just policing them correctly, and that's reflected in the budget.
Okay, so they had all right.
I'll just add to that through you, Mayor. It's basically policing correctly, also being vigilant around the schools. and also cracking down on construction work as well. And construction work such as not just parking, but also construction, illegal construction works and what have you. So, but also there's a rhythm with our ranges, with our spread of times. So we've formulated that to further increase and improve our functions.
Okay, so but this one here in the budget is just parking fines. Got basically double.
Yeah, but
Let's not enter into discussion. The acting general manager has answered that question.
It sounds
Please
like a
speak to your motion.
Significant
Speak
policy
to the
shift,
motion.
that's all. Okay, yeah, one more question. The sustainable and thriving initiatives that don't really go into much detail there. Can you maybe explain what they are and why they start? Where are they? They start in a couple of years' time.
The acting general manager, can you assist with that, or do you wish to take it on notice?
might have taken on notice unless the director can assist me.
Yeah, look, in terms of what's reflected in the long-term financial plan, what I can advise is there was a $100,000 allocation for property initiatives, so that does include from year to year when property opportunities does come up. We did only allow 100,000 because the property strategy in itself hadn't been finally resolved, but we thought that was a considered allowance for that. The other sustainable and thriving initiatives, which was discussed in the introduction of the last budget report, also referred to an increase in field hire and also community hire. So under the leadership of the previous general manager, the direction was given to try and collect further fees from community halls and also sporting fields. So essentially, and we also included an efficiency dividend across the and mind you, we haven't used that term, but that's a colloquial term that we're using internally, where we're looking to get savings across the board. But these are long-term financial plan initiatives.
Okay, and why do they start 2 years from now?
The property initiative.
There's a line that just doesn't make any sense in here. I'm just trying to find it, got the iPad.
Well, I think
sustainable and thriving.
Yeah, so essentially that's an allowance. So what we're saying is because we haven't got the final documentation, we're providing a conservative figure that says 100,000 is a realistic figure. We don't want to overestimate our income because at this point we don't have our final property documentation. So we're saying be it some sale of land, be it some small parcels of income from property leases, we think that's a realistic figure, 100,000. But also the fields and the sporting, the community hall hire as well, with the new facility that's in plan at Baronia Park and so forth. We're also allowing that as a future initiative.
Wouldn't that normally come under?
Yeah, we're getting into
No, I'm asking a serious question. We've got over $100,000, which is just.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to take it online and offline.
take it on
Come back to you
notice.
because I haven't got my head that deep into the budget. I've got the high level stuff pretty sorted, but I'm more than happy to come back to you with an email as to why that's the way it is.
acting general manager will come back with answers to that for you.
Okay, yeah, can be explained in the next business paper?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fantastic.
You wish to speak to the motion?
I will just briefly. Yeah, look, I'm surprised at Councillor Sanderson's observation that it's a good news story, because the operational deficit it's a deficit for 10 years. Now we only look forward 10 years. So as far into the future as we actually analyse, it's an operational deficit. Now, for those that are not really clear about the difference between a surplus and a deficit, for a local government body at a federal level, there are ways that the government can deal with the deficit. They could buy bonds, or they could print money. Even at a state level, they could enter the bond market. For a local government body, we don't have any of those facilities. So if we run out of money, that's it. So in the forward estimates of 10 years, we're in deficit, which means that we're just creeping down and losing the money. And we're not actually replacing the assets at the level they need to be replaced. Now, it's not the staff's fault at all. They're doing the best they can with what they've got. We brought something back. The property strategy which was to aim to address these issues. I brought this library initiative originally to council, which was knocked back, I think, 2 years in a row. When I tried, was it 1 year? Was it, councillor?
It was one.
Yeah, 1 year. 1 year. Well, that's $500,000. Right, that could have paid for 5 times what we're trying to put into the, So it's by delaying things and not actually acting on anything, which has been a hallmark of this council, in particular councillors here that say, let's not do it now. Let's just hope it all fixes itself. So in 4 years, we haven't been able to implement a strategy that will utilise our property assets so that we can fund the maintenance that we're not funding. And then it comes after nearly 4 years and then it's just deferred. When I bring the library back and we're paying 5% of our budget to write for a library that was barely used, it's delayed for a year. We form a committee, delayed for a year, and that costs $500,000 just delaying it. If we'd have done that earlier, we'd be $500,000 better off. The idea that we can just keep going along and not change anything is not realistic. And it is quite clear from the commentary from some councils, in particular Councillor Sanderson, to say that this is good. I just don't know on what planet this would be a good outcome. This financial result is not good. And that's my professional opinion. I'm an accountant. So it's really bad because it's negative as far as we can see. That's got to change. And until the culture around here, not the staff, the councillors, to say that, you know what, we have to do something. We have to make some changes. Not everything's, not everyone's going to like everything that we do. But if we don't, then we will cease to exist. This council cannot, if this was 20 years, we just run out of money. And what do we all move to ride? What do we do? What do we do when we run out of money? And there is no plan to stop that from happening. So it's a really bad result. Something has to change. And I mean, I've been harping on this for 4 years, but really, I would encourage anybody that's watching to think about how important they think the future of Hunters Hill is, and then to maybe think about that when they're deciding who they think will be able to lead this council in this next chapter, which is not it's not a clear path forward. It's not a clear path forward, and there's a lot that needs to be done. So,
is there any further debate? If not, I'll make a comment as I'll be voting on this. I'd like to congratulate the staff on an excellent document. It does come as a document based on evidence, and it's something quite unique, I think, in local government at the moment, that we now have an asset management system that is second to none and is leading in the government, local government sector. We do know now exactly what we need to spend on what within our responsibility. I think it's important to also note the council has had several workshop sessions and strategic planning sessions, and in those sessions there's been a range of options available to council to improve its financial position. And in light of where we are at the moment, that I understand has been on the basis that we have to revalue or redepreciate our assets. And okay, people will say that that should have been done before, but it's hit the budget at this time. So up until that point that we made that reassessment, council was pretty well on track to have a balanced budget. Now we have to readdress those issues, and there are plans to do that. There's 3 scenarios there which have been out to the public for consideration. And there's other options available to council. The property strategy is still on the table, and there's elements in that that can be further considered and can provide council with additional funding resources. There's a range of issues that come out of the Gladesville Master Plan. So council does have options. It has options through rate variations. It has options through working its way through its master planning for Gladesville and the additional funds that come from rates from that. There's options to go through further consideration of the property strategy and elements within that which the community are prepared to agree to. So council does have options, and I welcome the new council to embrace the options that are available to it, to look at the very high quality reports that are provided here for them, and work with the community to come up with an agreed outcome of the way forward. Good governance is based on adhering to process and making sure that you engage people through that process. To just make decisions on the run, I don't think is the right way for a council to operate. So I commend the staff on the report. It is founded on good, solid evidence, and there are options for the next council to move forward and to use a mixture of tools to deliver a sustainable and thriving outcome for this council. Is there any further debate?
I've got a question, Mayor.
You can ask a question, yes.
Question again. You just briefly touched upon there were elements of the property strategy that would help our financial position. Could you elaborate on that? And would you be willing to elaborate?
No, I'm not willing to elaborate on it because it's a document that's still being worked on, and it's a document which is being consulted with the community. The next iteration of that document closed for councillors to comment on last Friday, and I understand a few councillors has contributed to that. So the next iteration of that strategy will be put to the council for further consideration and to the community in terms of what council decides to move forward with. So as I say, there are options available to council, but that has to be done in consultation with our community. Is there any further
just
debate?
A follow-up question, if I can.
Yes,
just,
councillor.
Just that you mentioned that there are elements of the property strategy that would help the budget, but you're saying you're not willing to say what they are. I mean, you raised it in your speech to say that there are elements in the property strategy that would help our financial position, and yet you're unwilling to actually elaborate on what they are.
No,
don't you think that that's misleading?
No, councillor Collins. I've said that the document is still being worked through, and those elements, as agreed to by council, will come forward at a future date. So that's the answer that you're getting on that.
So no answer.
No, it's an answer that it's in council's. No, councillor Collins, it's in councillor's hands, and council has options available to it.
But you're not willing to say what options. Is that right? No,
Councillor
that's fine. No,
Collins.
that's fine.
Yeah,
I understand.
it's
just words. I understand.
Is there any further debate? Councillor Right of reply, Councillor Collins, Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One point I would make in all of this debate, the good news is that we now have a table. We didn't at the start of this. We have an honest, thorough assessment of our position. I agree that with those opposites, the extent is not good at the present time. But we have a route out of this. Property may make a contribution. Nothing I've seen yet suggested that it will be huge. We have a strategy that the next council will take up that will see us through the next 10 years. But we will get this council turned around if the right options are taken. With respect to making decisions, decisions cannot be thought bubbles. Decisions must be based on information. We have information on the table now. When it came to the library, yes, it was delayed for what might be 12 months. At that time, I think I was the councillor who put the notice of motion to investigate the library. The reason it wasn't made at the time, I put a notice of motion at that time for the decision on the library to be deferred for 3 months. Was we still didn't have the information because at that point in time, we were not able to obtain it. Since that time, we have had some changes that brought about an incredible flow of information. We now have information to work on. Decisions of council must be evidence-based. They cannot be thought bubbles and things that are not substantiated. I wait for the substantiation on the routes that we take. I wait for the substantiation on anything that I do with property strategy. I'm waiting for substantiation to see that we could move the luggage, and then I backed it. Our facts or our decisions must be based on real evidence, not just thoughts and ideas that you throw up in the local paper.
That closes
Question.
debate.
I have a
No,
question.
that's the end
I'm
of
allowed to
debate.
ask a
No, you're
question.
not. Sorry.
I'm not allowed to-
The matter's closed. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. We now move on to item number 4.2, which we have a number of speakers for that. So I'll move to my, let's deal with the Glazel Reserve proposal for improving playing field capacity. And we have a number of speakers. And the first speaker is Mr. Paul Mahoney. Would you like to address council for 3 minutes? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. My name is Paul Mahoney. I'm a resident of Henley and have concerns about actions taken by council staff in relation to a deed of funding associated with Glazel Reserve, despite the actions from the meeting of 19 April not having been completed. At the April meeting, council staff were unable to provide any details about the funding, yet tonight's agenda item indicates that a deed of funding has subsequently been signed without community consultation. I note that the deed of funding states a key objective of a higher quality playing surface that enables more players, more teams, and more sports to use the ground for a range of active and passive recreation pursuits. I believe that the key objective should reflect the role of Glazel Reserve as a community facility that is used by a wide range of community members, and such a community facility should not be restricted to players and teams. The key objective should read along the lines of a higher quality playing surface that remains accessible to all members of the community for a range of active and passive recreation pursuits. I also note that the approved scope includes the provision of a new perimeter fence around the pitch, with the field being marked for soccer and futsal. As identified in the New South Wales Government Budget Estimates hearing of March 2021 that was referenced in tonight's agenda item, fencing of fields results in the fields being only available for organised sports, so casual use, dog walking, taking your kids across the park are often excluded from synthetic ovals. Thus, the approved scope would inherently restrict use of Glazel Reserve to soccer and futsal to the exclusion of the rest of the community. Such a scope is contrary to retaining a community resource that is accessible to all, and notably is in conflict with the stated action of this agenda item of improve and maximise access to and use of parks, community, sporting and cultural facilities, as it blocks many members of the community from accessing this important community asset. The conclusion of tonight's agenda item states, in reference to the need to increase the availability of playing time, that there needs to be a quadruple bottom line approach taken. This approach requires council to consider the 4 things: 1, people; 2, planet; 3, profit; and 4, purpose. Synthetic playing fields, particularly those with perimeter fences of the type mentioned in the scope, fail this 4-pronged assessment. 1, fenced synthetic fields exclude access to large sections of the community and thus do not satisfy the people criterion. 2, synthetic fields are harmful to the planet through microplastics, environmental heat, reduced biodiversity, and produce in excess of 200 tonnes of landfill every 7 to 10 years, and thus do not satisfy the planet criterion. Synthetic fields are 2.5 times more expensive than natural turf over 25 and 50-year lifespans, according to research conducted by the Western Australian Government. And this would impose tremendous pressure on the working capital budget of this council, particularly in light of the projected deficits that have been identified here tonight. So therefore, it fails to satisfy the profit criterion. 4, synthetic fields can provide increased playing hours for a small select number of activities, but for only a portion of the year in cooler months, and are unfit for purpose during summer, are not suited for a diverse range of activities, and thus are contrary to the stated objective of surface that can be used all year round.
Could you just wait? Councillor Sanderson, Councillor McLaughlin, motion to extend time. All those in favour, declare that unanimous. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
You've got another 3 minutes.
I won't take it. The $2 million funding grant offered to Hunters Hill Council provides this council with a tremendous opportunity to upgrade Glazel Reserve to provide a quality recreational ground that remains open to all of the community all year round. There are natural grass and hybrid grass solutions that would satisfy the stated objectives and actions, provide a high quality playing surface, retain access to all community members, be much more environmentally friendly, and be implemented at a lower cost to council. And it is incumbent upon council to explore those options.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, councillor Miles.
Through you to the general manager, and I note that you did reply to an email today with a similar query about the timing. Could the general manager or acting general manager just elaborate on the signing of that deed and the timeline?
Mr. Acting General Manager, are you able to do that for
Well,
us?
councillors, I can only comment on my signing of the amended deed, which was just to change the milestones to enable us to get $200,000 funding up front, so we can actually do those additional studies that we've been asked to do through the current resolution of council.
Sorry, do that answer the question, because you're talking, sorry, General Manager, Acting General Manager, you mentioned there was an amended deed of funding.
Not normal for speakers to
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
drill
Can I
the staff.
just,
So, as Councillor Miles.
The acting general manager, it's my understanding that as per your email, that the deed was signed in relation to the synthetic, or in relation to the grant funding, prior to the meeting in which this resolution was passed. Is that correct?
Oh, that's what I'm led to believe now, yes.
So then essentially the variation has to occur as a result of the April resolution.
Well, it made good sense to get that milestone of $200,000, given that council's asked for a lot of additional work to be undertaken and reports generated.
I would imagine that the deed would have been signed as a result of the process we're going through with the plan of management for Gladesville Reserve at the time. In my assumption.
Well, that's an assumption. I can't comment on the original sign.
Is there any further questions for Mr. Mahoney? No, thank you very much for your time this evening. We'll now move to the next speaker. Actually, it's being read out for Ms. Linda Govenlock.
My name is Linda Govenlock. I'm a resident of Henley, and I wish to be heard in relation to agenda item 4.2, Gladesville Playing Reserve. I've been following the proposal to upgrade Gladesville Reserve playing field with close interest. I'm deeply concerned by what I perceive to be a lack of due process and lack of transparency, which is contrary to the role of council in supporting community engagement and representing the members and ratepayers of Hunters Hill municipality. I am particularly concerned that a deed of funding with associated scope has been signed, 1, before the Sustainability Committee has reported on the matter, 2, in the absence of advice from consultants with expertise in natural turf and irrigation solutions, and 3, before a revised business case has been brought to council as agreed at the meeting on the 19th of April 2021. The strategic outcome of the item 4.2 states that the services and facilities that are child, youth, family and aged friendly are supported. These strategic outcomes are intimately and inherently entwined with a consideration of the environmental impacts of the provision of any such service and facilities, and this should be expressly stated in the strategic outcome. The action of item 4.2 is stated to be to improve and maximise access to and use of park, community, sporting and cultural facilities. Of particular concern is the statement in 4.2 that council has signed a deed of funding in which the approved scope is the construction of a new high quality, well-constructed playing field in the same location as the existing turf field. The new playing field will include lights for night training, a new perimeter fence around the pitch. The new playing field will be marked for soccer and football and include a cricket wicket for summer sports. This narrow scope is plainly drafted to reflect the primary interests of All Saints Soccer and does not reflect or meet the diverse needs and concerns of the broader community. It also plainly contrary to stated action of maximising access to the reserve. To the extent that the item 4.2 contemplates that an article synthetic playing surface is a preferred or favourable option that will be achieve the strategic outcome and action, this must be rejected as being 1, contrary to the broader and diverse interest of the community as a whole, 2, short-sighted and harmful to the environment in short, medium and long term, 3, restrictive to the overall accessibility of the reserve to members of the community, 4, inconsistent with the state purpose of achieving extended playing hours and using all year round, particularly in warmer conditions, and 5, fiscally irresponsible when more cost-effective long-term solutions are immediately available, which do not suffer from negative attributes of points 1, 2, 3, and 4. Council has acknowledged the existence of climate emergency and the imperable adverse environmental impacts of artificial synthetic playing fields is well documented. It is incumbent upon Council to lead the way in the upgrade of Gladesville Reserve by adopting a progressive and environmentally sound natural turf-based solution consistent with published sustainability objectives and community expectations.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mrs. Simone Concha. Would you please come forward, 3 minutes, and if need be, we'll try to extend it for you.
Thank you. On behalf of the group of active Henley residents, I'm pleased to address Council again on the proposal for an upgrade of Gladesville Reserve. Tonight, I would like to ask Council what progress has been made against commitments made in Council's resolution of 19th of April. We're keen to know, with council elections coming up, when the community can expect these commitments to be delivered and publicly reported on. We were very surprised to see that Council has signed a deed of funding with the New South Wales Office of Sport and approved a scope for the upgrade of Gladesville Reserve. We've repeatedly sought advice about the deed to no avail. We've been brushed off, and I'm sorry to say we've been flat out lied to. We're very grateful to the Acting General Manager, Mr. Tobin, who has been the first person to give a straight answer. Council's former General Manager signed the funding deed in February. While it's disappointing that this fact was not shared when we directly asked in the April meeting, we take heart from the transparency now being shown by the Acting General Manager. We're also surprised to see that the scope includes a perimeter fence, which has never before been publicly discussed. We'd like to know how and when the scope was drafted and who approved it. Importantly, why has a fence suddenly appeared in the proposal? These are reasonable questions that deserve direct answers here tonight. We hope that Council will continue with a no surprise approach, because the poor community engagement and lack of transparency and courtesy that Council has shown its constituents previously undermines our confidence in the integrity of its planning processes. Council's consultation on this matter up to this point has been abysmal and not keeping with statutory or moral requirements. Council has yet to address this critical concern. I note that the update makes no reference to either consultation previously undertaken or the consultation to come. Can we please call on Council to commit tonight to providing constructive and meaningful engagement with the community on this matter? Anyone who reads the local online community forums can see how unnecessarily polarising this debate has become. We ask that Council at the right time bring all the interested parties together in a facilitated forum to discuss their aspirations for Gladesville Reserve and debate the merits and concerns relating to both synthetic pitch and natural turf. All of us want improved use of Gladesville Reserve, and this issue would benefit from an informed, constructive and inclusive discussion. We look to Council to show integrity and leadership as the community works towards the best solution to meet that objective. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Miles, you have your hand up.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, the acting GM. The scope issue with the fence, which I know is quite a significant one, because the fences are, a bit controversial by their nature. That scope is able to change, isn't it? That's not a requirement or anything like that of the funding.
Mr. Acting General Manager, can you
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I didn't realise fence was such going to be such a big issue, to be honest with you, but the scope can change. I mean, we need to do that consultation. We need to get all these additional reports. You know, we've got 3 more things we need to do in the resolution. That all needs to come back, and then through the community consultation back to council, which will guide the scope and will guide the final project. I mean, that's the undertaking I can give you, is what we're aiming to do. We won't get these other reports until the government's report comes down, because they need that to be able to do their reports as well. So it will take some time. I can't give you a timeline tonight when it's going to happen, but it'll certainly happen as quick as it can once that government report comes down. But we need, that's the trigger for us to do the additional work. We're certainly going to bring it back, and if the community and the council says we don't want a fence, then there won't be a fence. As simple as that. And then you go back to the government and you negotiate. The most important thing for us at the moment was to secure that $2 million so you can get a better field down there in whatever way the community wants it. And that's what I'm going to deliver if I get the chance in the next 6 months.
Good, thank you. Councillor Sanderson, you had your hand up.
I think I was basically going to ask the same question as Councillor Miles if the General Manager fills in.
Are there any further questions? If not, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. We appreciate it. We now move to Mr. Ewan McLeod. If you'd like to come forward, 3 minutes, and we may extend it if necessary.
Sure. All right. Thanks again for the opportunity to address you for the third time now. Probably just for clarity and transparency, from a football club, we had no input into the scope either. So a lot of this stuff is new to us. I actually see a fence as being kind of consistent with what you get at Bronia Oval, for example. So one of the reasons I'm here tonight is just wanted to confirm that as a club, we're still committed to this opportunity and this project. And we are still looking to ensure that at Gladesville Reserve get the most environmentally sensitive synthetic playing field at Gladesville Reserve, which is very much along the lines of what's happening at Lane Cove. I can't remember the name of the oval, where they're actually going for a leading edge, no infill solution, which actually addresses a lot of the environmental concerns, but it still remains the whole of life kind of environmental issues still remain. So post the last council meeting, I think it did come across in the business case that it was very All Saints centric. And again, from an All Saints perspective, we didn't write the business case, but we are heavily involved in it. So post that meeting, we, through the council, had a meeting with the cricket club and also Riverside Girls. So the three of us, we see as the biggest users of the oval. And from a football perspective, it was a very constructive and positive meeting. From a Riverside Girls perspective, they were in favour of a synthetic field, and they're actually looking at doing some work internal to their grounds from of a synthetic nature. From a cricket perspective, they were not against the idea. Now, again, noted in the scope how it talks about a wicket in the centre of the field. We strongly don't want that, because actually there's only about one night a week that's used for cricket currently, and the wicket actually affects the field all year round from a football perspective. So with discussions with Ben Woods from the cricket, we actually come up with, well, one of the programs that cricket currently does is called Master Blaster, which is for the younger age group, and they don't actually need a cricket wicket. And they currently use Monash Park to do this on a Friday night, and they would happily move to Gladesville Reserve to do that. And part of that is within the scope, if possible, to actually get additional cricket wickets down as part of the solution at Gladesville Reserve. So to me, that's not trying to exclude any member or any part of the community. Even if a fence does end up as the final solution, a gate at one end, a gate at the other end, you can walk through, you can use the field when it's not in play. I don't see how that would exclude anyone. In part of the last meeting, the kind of the last minute change of scope, and they brought up the idea of Meadowhead Oval. I'd never heard of it. up until that meeting. I've subsequently gone and visited it twice. It's a great oval. They've done a great job there.
A motion to extend, councillor Sanderson, councillor Miles put the motion. All those in favour declare it carried unanimously. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, that's a lovely oval, and I genuinely believe that a grass field in that location is the right thing. I do note from a Mosman football perspective, it will be reviewed in 2022 to see how actually whether it holds up, because obviously grass has a shorter lifespan. The actual grass itself is quite clumpy, so it's not actually that great for football. It still looks good. Also, when you look at Middlehead Oval, its location, it's wide open. It's nothing like Gladesville Reserve. Gladesville Reserve has got trees on one side, it's got a different aspect. So it's a bit like comparing apple with oranges. So I don't think you're actually going to get the same result at Gladesville Reserve if you were to do what happened at Middlehead. One of the other points was around the financial risk. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions while I'm here, because I think we can have this kind of conversation. One of the things to note is that there was something concerns raised about insufficient commercial rate around ground hire or risk. So in the business case, with our existing usage, that would cover 50% of that. So that would be via increased rate hire and also the increased light. Now we've had conversations with academies, the demand for a summer soccer competition, which would quite comfortably cover the other 50%. But if it were to give again, just listening about the last agenda item about the not so sound finances of the council, as a football club, we're happy to guarantee that that revenue if it's such a concern for you, because we know that we will be able to get people in. I know that once it was flagged as a potential synthetic pitch, the demand for other academies was very, 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 very hot because people want to use it and there's a demand for it. And then probably just to close off, I just note that all the fields in Hunters Hill are closed today because of the weather. At other councils with synthetic pitches, those fields are open. So kids are out playing, getting exercise, keeping fit. And that's from kids through to seniors playing walking football. So it's to all parts, all age groups. So thank you, and I'm more than happy to take questions.
Yes, thank you. Are there questions, Ms. McLeod?
I just do
Yes,
question.
Councillor President.
Thank you. You mentioned about being open to other academies and being able to rent the space to other people, but you've also mentioned previously that you're not getting enough hours for your own club on there. So can you just clarify that for me?
Yes, so there's different times of the year where you can have academies or the club. So in the summer months when we're winter sport, so in the summer months you can have the summer academy. So and that can be 3 nights a week, and then the other 2 nights of the week can be a summer soccer competition. That, as previously mentioned, kids and adults currently play at Blackman Oval in Lane Cove, a synthetic pitch. The reason why that's popular is because it's guaranteed to be one. Right, and that's in summer months. When it's hot, it's still you can still use it.
And then also just one more, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned that you had no input into this scope that we're reading here for the first time this week.
Any further questions? If not, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. We now move to a Zoom presentation from Mr. Mutton, who's standing in for Mr. Andrew Accompanying. We got that available?
Here.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mutton. You have 3 minutes to give your address. Thank you.
Thanks very much. My name is Chris Mutton, and I'm presenting this submission on behalf of my neighbour Andrew Curry, who is a resident of Henley, but he's unable to attend tonight. Andrew's submission relates to agenda item 4.2, Gladesville Reserve playing field. So he says, I, like many of our voting and rate paying community, are deeply concerned by the potential that Gladesville Reserve is being considered for an artificial synthetic playing field. This is a Gladesville Reserve. It's not Gladesville Sports Ground or Gladesville Stadium. I'm also concerned that the loud voices of a small and singular group of individuals who are from All Saints Football Club members, they're advocating for plastic grass, but not all members of the club take that view. Indeed, this small and vocal group is lobbying loudly, and it's pitting itself against local residents, against ratepayers and the broader community who agree that we should not be tearing up an ecosystem and replacing it with plastic in this day and age. They also pit themselves against the many, many diverse users of the Gladesville Reserve who use it for much of the 168 hours a week that it's open to the community. Like many in our community, Andrew says, I am also extremely concerned by an apparent lack of transparency and due process in the community engagement, as we've previously seen, and now in the framing of this item 4.2. This item is framed in a way that primarily reflects the interests of the All Saints Football Club to the exclusion of all others. Agenda item 4.2 suggests that council has signed a deed of funding for which the approved scope will include lights for night training and a new perimeter fence around the pitch, and that it will be marked for soccer and futsal. This narrowly framed framing primarily focuses on the interests of the small group of the All Saints Football Club members who are advocating for that plastic field, with a perimeter fence that further limits the ability and the amenity of the reserve to the full range of users. It doesn't reflect the broad and diverse users of the reserve, and it ignores the concerns of the broader community as expressed in the motion taken by the April Council meeting in relation to this matter. Therefore, to the extent that item 4.2 considers that a plastic playing field is a preferred or a favoured option, this must be universally rejected. And the framers must be held to account. This is because a plastic field is not appropriate for several reasons. A plastic field ignores the diverse interests of the community as a whole and the many different users of the field now and in the future. All Saints are not the custodians, the primary users, the main users, or anything else. They are one of many cohorts of possible users of the field. Secondly, the plastic field is environmentally unconscionable. Headlines that read Hunters Hill rips up grass to lay down plastic is something that is both out of step with science, common sense, and community expectation, and a downright embarrassment to future generations, including the children that use the reserve today. Plastic field squanders an opportunity for this council and all of its councillors, including those on both sides of politics, to demonstrate their understanding of the science and of the community sentiment, and to be leaders in delivering a sustainable, cost-effective playing solutions. These views are not the views that I'm expressing are not the views of leftists and hippies. The vast majority of people and the totality of informed science recognise the importance of sustainability, and so we must as well. The plastic field doesn't make financial sense. Solutions that are more cost effective now and over the long term, when you take into account total cost of ownership, and that they're based on a natural turf solution, are available, and they're better for everyone. Finally, a win-win solution is possible, one that creates a better playing field for All Saints, a better reserve for all other users, a better outcome for the ecosystem, and overall an environmentally more friendly and sustainable solution, all for a better financial outcome for we residents that pay our rates to Hunters Hill Council. This is what we're looking for. This is an opportunity to secure a win for the community, for sporting groups, the environment, and for council coffers. I'm sorry, I may have missed if you rang a bell against me there. But
no, we haven't.
Yep.
Please continue.
Thank you. I'm
You're
sorry.
a lucky person. Yep.
I'll press on. I'm nearly there.
Please. Yep.
I'm profoundly disappointed in the way that this agenda item has been framed. However, I am optimistic and confident that we can achieve an outstanding outcome for all. We have an excellent way forward and an opportunity to unite behind it. So the issue here is the option, evaluating properly the option of a natural grass solution here. We have an opportunity to develop a solution that improves outcomes for all users, for all saints, for residents, for rate players, for dog walkers, for school children, for other sports groups such as rugby, frisbee, athletics, boot campers, as well as an improved outcome for the local ecology, I should say, the environment and future generations, a solution that is the most cost effective. I'm confident that we can find a win-win-win solution. If all of us get behind finding that most suitable solution, investing just a few more months in doing this properly is really important, ensuring that we don't all end up with a solution that ruins the area for in the next 25 plus years. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mutton. Are there any questions? If not, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. That's appreciated. Just for those that are watching, I have a screen down here, so I didn't have my back to you. I was watching you in front there. So we now move to the next speaker, who is Mr. Michael Clayton. Would you please come forward, please?
Hello, councillors. So just to start, All Saints is not talking about astroturfing all of Gladesville Reserve and Henley Reserve. We are talking about an existing field which takes up 8% of Henley and Gladesville Reserve and repurposing that 8%. It's one of 9 fields. We're asking for one of 9 fields. And some of the hysteria that's been going on needs to reflect the fact that what we're asking to do is one small change in one small place in all of Hunters Hill Council. So I just put that on the table. So I'm the registrar of All Saints Hunters Hill. I'm still a greenie, yay. I'd like to confirm, despite what Facebook and I Love Gladesville say, we really do have 930 registered players, coaches and managers. We really are double the average club in Northwest Sydney football, and we're actually still proud of that fact. Now, we cannot apologise for the fact that we are the largest users of Gladesville Reserve, as, along with Riverside Girls High School, are 2,000 users of Gladesville Reserve. We are 2,000 users. We are also the community. Now, when I hear people talking about going against the community, we are the community. The high school and the football club are the community, along with Henley residents. They too are the community. We are all part of the community. So in the remaining probably 2 minutes now, I was at the community consultation conducted by the Department of Primary Industry and Environment on the 27th of May. I also had a really engaging meeting with the Mayor, with myself and with Ewan, and I'll just give a quick update on that too. So the DPIE workshop on artificial and all-weather pitches, a 2-hour assault by 12 no synthetic ever, anywhere, anytime protagonists against myself and one other member of the football club, the registrar from Northbridge. It was 12 v 2, and in football parlance, we copped a bit of a hiding. Did you know artificial pitches give you cancer? Did you know that artificial pitches cause injuries? Did you know that artificial pitches are poisonous? Artificial pitches burn small children. Artificial pitches cause infections that lead to gangrene. This is from the meeting. And that's definitely true because I had a gangrenous leg waved at me in the meeting. Now, clearly none of this stuff is helpful. So as a father of 4 kids who play regularly on all-weather synthetic pitches, as well as playing on them myself, I'm grateful that those protagonists were able to save me and my family from ourselves. But that's the sort of rubbish that's been going around. More objections followed in the meeting. What about the replacement costs? I said, we've got a sinking fund. Ewan alluded to it. We're happy to pay increased fees. That's in the business case. What about the black crumb infill? That technology is obsolete and will never be used in any synthetic field moving forward in this state. The best objection to artificial pitches came from our last meeting actually here in these chambers. That was when a speaker claimed that a synthetic field at Gladesville Reserve would cause a heat sink and require more air conditioning in Riverside Girls High. barking mad, but that's what the debate has become. So back to the DPIE meeting. There were some people who are open to the idea of artificial fields, as long as they were placed on disused industrial land or the tops of car parks, basically anywhere where families really wouldn't want to use them. So I'm not against it here.
Motion to extend, Councillor Miles, Councillor McLaughlin, all those in favour, against, declare it carried.
Thank you. So people claim they're not against artificial fields, but just not here. They do it all the time, and they do it in every single decision that gets made at this council. You guys all know it. There was some useful commentary on the need for councils to look at sporting infrastructure overall and not to tie grants to specific locations, generally accepted as a good idea. Even the idea that if you already have 6 synthetic fields, why would you need a 7th? We agree, but we're asking for 1 out of 9. It was also generally agreed that the push for synthetic fields was partly due to council's lack of maintenance budgets, lack of expertise in the maintenance of fields, and lack of personnel to allow them to adequately look after fit for purpose turf fields. And that's an area of the upcoming second business case that I would urge all councillors to take a very close look at. So despite my concerns about the deliberate misinformation and fear-mongering, my personal takeout from the meeting is that the report that comes down for the New South Wales state government will conclude that we shouldn't rip up every turf field in Sydney and replace it with synthetic, but that they do have their place in certain educational and sporting settings as long as environmental considerations are extensively addressed. So to move on to the meeting with the Mayor. There were several similar objections to the DPI participants, microplastics, injury, heat, etc. But there was also a comment about the high level of available land in Hunters Hill and the possibility of using Goat Paddock for an additional 2 football fields, which is an interesting suggestion. And it comes back to, if not Gladesville Reserve, where else? So Goat Paddock, 2 additional football fields, that's something that I'd like to see as part of a mayoral run in the next elections. As long as the community is advised that All Saints are completely against the proposal and we did not ask for it. The Mayor's other concern was process, and that's actually come up tonight, process in terms of your budgetary and financial considerations, process. Hunters Hill Council didn't ask for the funds and council were not consulted. It was All Saints who lobbied the state government and were successful. That is a fact. This brings me neatly to my conclusion and the agenda item at hand. A business case for a new Cooch field, which no one with the exception of Councillor Sanders has asked for. Between Riverside Girls High and All Saints Hunters Hill, there are 2,000 users. Who lobbied for a Cooch field at council? Out of those 2,000 users, who wants it? So as a cash-strapped council, you'll get the greatest bang for your buck and address the greatest need of the greatest number by spending the $2 million grant on a synthetic field that is fit for purpose. It's similar to the Lane Cove Council fields and it will be enjoyed for many generations to come. Thank you.
Are there any questions? If not, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. Appreciate it. We now move to Mrs. Maureen Ball, who a council officer will read.
My name is Maureen Ball, and as a resident of Henley since 1985, I'm concerned about the proposal to provide an improved surface to Gladesville Reserve. My main concern is the natural turf will be replaced with plastic turf. Synthetic playing fields result in generations of a huge amount of non-recyclable landfill. They also leach microplastics into waterways. This is of a particular concern as the Gladesville Reserve is located next to the Parramatta River. Synthetic playing fields have been shown to be dangerously hot in summer, reaching temperatures of excess of 75°C. This severely limits any use of the field during summer, both organised and passive recreation, and means that plastic fields do not provide a playing surface that can be used all year round, which is contrary to council stated objective and council sustainability process. I use Gladesville Reserve on a daily basis to walk my dog, which would no longer be possible if fenced off. The proposal to include a perimeter fence would severely limit access to the broader community, which is inconsistent with the stated strategic outcome of being family friendly and stated action of improving and maximising access to and use of park, community, sporting and cultural facilities. There is no stated objective or apparent advantage from having a perimeter fence. The only outcome of the fence is to exclude members of the community.
Thank you. That now concludes the presentations. Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll move the recommendation, but with an amendment if I can. Unfortunately, this is not the one that I sent through on text earlier. It's just been scribbled out on the table by Councillor Cresswell and myself. So I move the amended motion. One, that the report be received and noted. Two, the process, design and development adhere to the intention of Council Resolution 315/21 of 19 April 2021 and involve engagement with and input from the community and other interested parties, including bringing all parties together in a facilitated forum to discuss their aspirations for an improved scope of Gladesville Reserve. I'll hand that over if I can. Copy I have.
Is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor Cresswell. You wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Sanderson?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Look, when these papers came out this week, last week, I shared many of the concerns of many of the speakers tonight. The process has not been perfect, and I think we all need to acknowledge that. One of the things that's been left out of the process has been proper consultation. And as everyone would know, I'm someone who is very strong on the idea that we should consult the community on as much as we can. The little consultation that was done came out of processes conducted in part by sticking post-it notes on a board down in Henley Green, and I don't believe that's sufficient. There has been no consultation at all of this specific project. So I think it's important that we, the motion is not generally for this. Very deliberately not restrictive about how that consultation should occur, but I think I think I've actually stolen some of the words of Mrs. Concha in drafting the motion, that to suggest that a forum where we get people together in a room so we understand each other's concerns, I think would be something that would assist getting an improved outcome. The other thing I was a little bit concerned about that we did, in the time we had, given the rush for preparation of that meeting in April, where we had that massive agenda, I thought we made a pretty reasonable fist of that response that we had, that was resolution, the resolution I referred to in this current motion. At the same time, it is mentioned in this recommendation. At the same time, it doesn't suggest that the scope is going to incorporate all of that process. And there are other parts of it to be considered, including the fencing, which is one of the issues that's been raised. So I think tonight it's more about process than ultimate outcome. But I think it's important we put everything in place so that we do have proper consultation. We do have we do consider all of the elements that might make up this final project, which is far from being finalised.
Is there any further debate? Councillor McLaughlin.
I just got a question.
Yes.
Please, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Sanderson. So, Councillor Sanderson, you're suggesting that this getting together of all the parties happen before we get the result of all of
I've
this?
deliberately not been prescriptive of that.
Right.
That-
So before we get the results from the state government and the business.
that can occur if.
I would
we
think
so.
after, so all the information's on the table.
Right, that, I just wanted to clarify.
Councillor Miles?
Supportive of getting parties together, definitely, particularly the residents and the department. Just a couple of questions. I have a concern. I have a concern around the original motion that was put and adopted in point 3 that, and I just want to understand the extent and the reasoning around consulting with Dr. Mick Batten of Ag Enviro Solutions and Martin Shepherd of Smart Connections. I would have thought that would be in contravention with our tendering policy if we are unilaterally appointing consultants to a project without going to tender or going through any expressions of interest process. I would ask through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sanderson, who was the original mover of the motion, what, if any, relationship he has with Dr. Mick Batten or Martin Shepherd, and why it is that that they were suggested as consultants to this project without going to tender.
Councillor Sanderson, do you have a response?
Look, they were not in any way suggested as being so all it said is that if you read the motion, they'll just use an example of someone who has expertise.
Consult with Dr. Mick Batten and
No.
Let's not.
You're not reading the original motion. You're reading what the council report says.
Excuse me. This is not. There's a question. If you answer the question to the best of your ability, that answers the response.
The original motion is more explicit. The council seek the advice of consultants.
What is the question, Councillor Miles?
Well,
we're not here to debate that motion.
We are here to discuss the motion that was passed and its passage in the various next stages that we have to go through. I'm supportive of getting the parties together. Absolutely, has to happen. I would imagine that the DPIE is going to have to come together with their reporting before we, as you say, do anything. But I have a problem with
what is the question? Unless you wish to rise and speak against the motion or to the motion.
I'm supportive of the motion, but I'm not supportive of decisions being made about the consultants that we're appointing without going to expressions of interest. That concerns me that specific environmental consultants were named in the original motion. Now, that wasn't a factor of the debate last time because, quite frankly, this was put on as a late item. But I have a problem with that because we don't know what the costings are for this extra consultation. Now, there will be components of the consultation, getting residents together with the clubs, that will not cost us anything. There are consultations like reporting from consultants I've never heard of that will, you would imagine, seriously eat into the budget that we have allocated to us from the state government for this project. So I've got a problem with that, and we're going to have to resolve that in some way, shape or form, maybe through you to the General Manager.
The way to resolve it is for the General Manager to take it on notice and come back to Council with a report on.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if there's any issues in relation to those consultants breaching our purchasing policy, then we will have to obtain other quotations. I actually just read it tonight before I came in here, the purchasing policy. So we'll adhere to that. And I also understand that the two consultants that are mentioned are also part of the DPI reporting process as well. So we may get some of the stuff we want through the report, and then we'll need to see what our scope would be to these consultants to get additional information if required. Excuse me.
Thank you. Councillor Cresswell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I could maybe provide a tiny bit of clarification, I think. Firstly, the motion that Councillor Sanderson put just says that I haven't got it out, but that we can seek advice of consultants such as Ag Enviro, as in EG, but it's actually the council officer's report that suggests we consult with Ag Enviro and Martin Shepherd. Now, as I understand it, Ag Enviro Solutions is Nick Adam, who does natural turfing, and Martin Shepherd, I believe, is an expert in synthetic fields. So obviously, I'm guessing, through you, Mr Mayor, perhaps, that the reason the council officer is consulting with both of those experts in their fields is because they're wanting to get a balanced and properly presented business case this time.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate?
Question,
Yes,
before I
councillor
ask a
Collins,
question,
you have a question.
through you, Mayor of Council Sanderson, have you had any conversation or correspondence with anyone from Ag Enviro Solutions?
I've spoken to Dr.
Did you speak to him before you put this motion up? No. After? When did you have a conversation with?
Oh, it was just after evidence.
Evidence. Right, so you were making your own inquiries.
No, what's the question?
Oh, well, the question, Mr Mayor, it's obviously very important that we have transparency on this. If Councillor Sanderson is somehow speaking with, we've got a report, speak with a consultant, he's put up.
Councillor Collins,
Yes.
Councillor Sanderson has explained his position in relation to this person. What is a further question that is further to that?
When was the last correspondence you had with him?
I spoke to him briefly after this had occurred.
So after this motion passed, you called?
Oh, it's not, Councillor Collins, it's not an interrogation. Councillor Sanderson has answered your question. Now, do you have another question? Or
I do,
move on?
Mayor, and I'm entitled to ask questions unless
You
you want
are-
to shut this down.
No, you're
because
entitled
you're
to.
afraid of transparency. I'm simply asking
Oh,
questions that the community would like to know.
Councillor Collins, you're entitled to ask questions,
Thank
but
you.
you're not entitled to interrogate another councillor.
Right?
If they've answered your question, that is it. So ask another question if that's what you wish to do.
I'll have a follow-up question.
Through the chair.
Yeah, through me, yeah. that's
Through
right.
the mayor. So after this motion passed, how long was it before you made contact with Ag Enviro Solutions? Are we doing that, are we?
Councillor Collins, you've had an answer.
I might leave that one for now. I think that will have to go offline. Interesting. Okay, I'll speak if I may, if no one wants to speak.
You've
No,
spoken to
sorry.
the motion,
No, I haven't
councillor.
spoken.
Oh, I've just got another question through you, Mr Mayor. I'm not sure who actually to direct it to, but I guess it's just to update the council and the members of the public that council did refer the matter to the Sustainability Advisory Committee, who has met on that issue. And I don't think that particular meeting minutes are out yet, but it is just an update to say that has already happened.
Okay. Yes, councillor Collins, you wish to speak?
I will speak against the motion. Not that I'm, I'll just briefly say that I'd like to keep the motion as it is and insert. Are we throwing out the rest of the motion just to put that in? Is that how? Because we've only just received that.
Throwing out the rest of
Motion is
what
just the
motion? The
first.
motion is only to receive and note in the original paper. There's an additional point
Okay, so
too.
okay, no, that's fine. I'm happy for that to go ahead. Okay. I will just briefly speak to it. There's been a lot of
So you're speaking to it now, is it not against it?
I'm sorry, are you the mayor?
I'm just wondering.
Well, that's an interesting question. Could you
You
please?
address your question through the mayor.
Councillor Collins, are you speaking for or against? Because that's
I'm
important.
speaking for the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Now, there's been a lot of discussion out there that consultation hasn't taken place, and there's been shortfalls in the way that consultation has taken place. Look, there comes a time when someone takes a position on something, and people might feel as though they haven't been heard simply because they're not in. Some councils are not in agreement. Now, from my perspective, we have to weigh up all users of the Oval, of the reserve. humans and dogs, and we have to rank them accordingly. I understand that this will make it for some users of the park, of the reserve, it won't be as ideal as it is for them now. But then there's an overwhelming, I would say a majority of users that will have better use of it. Now, the reason why we can't have the grass, the cooch, is because we don't get the same number of playing hours. The issue we have is not the quality of the surface, but the usage of it. We cannot get, I think it's 80 hours. We can get that out of a synthetic surface. We can't get 30 hours a week out of grass. Even if I think everybody has always agreed that grass is better. There are environmental costs, there are financial costs, although this is fully funded. We have to remember that I think at the end of the day, I think most people's objection to it probably comes from one fundamental part, whether it's because they like to walk their dog there or because they conduct another activity there. But really, we have to look at it from the perspective of all those, as the ovals are close, say, all those kids, hundreds and hundreds of kids not having somewhere to play sport. I haven't heard any children, any under 9s or under 8s, under 7s come in here and explain how important sport is to them. So sometimes we have to actually advocate for the people that don't come in here and don't make themselves heard and don't even get a vote. But what we are doing here is trying to find a way that more children can play sport in Hunters Hill at a time when they're on devices and, you know, none of these club coaches of these kids' teams, they don't get paid. It's voluntary work that they go out to try and help people connect with the community, get kids active. There are so many good aspects of that. And if that means that it's not as great for a dog walk, then we just have to weigh that up and be honest about it. Now, I've heard a lot, and I want to hear more, every aspect of it. There are environmental concerns that we need to address when we conduct it. There are financial considerations to make. We need to do all that, but we don't simply strike something out because of a particular reason, unless there's no will to actually do it. Now, I'm committed to finding a way to do this, for this to happen, so that more kids can play sport on that reserve. And along the way, there are going to be concerns raised about financial aspects, which I can address, environmental aspects that will come out of this, business case, everything. But I'm not looking for those things to try and stop it. I'm trying to look at those things and figure out a way that we can get it done. So I would just encourage people in this discussion to be open to the idea that I, for one, am committed to this happening. And anything that comes in the way that tries to stop it, I want to address it. I want to fix it and help it, address the environmental, address the financial, whatever it is. So I just want to make it clear that I am listening. But you know, there's also got to be movement. The idea that we can address all these issues. So yeah, that's also it's disappointing. It was raining on the weekend, and I just thought, I mean, every weekend that we delay this means that the kids are stuck inside, and it's just not good. It's just not good for the community. So I hope that we can move this along. I look forward to this consultation event. I hope a lot of people turn up with a broad range of voices. I suspect they will. And I hope it's informative, constructive discussion and respectful.
There further debate in relation, Councillor Cresswell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Sanderson, for that addition to the receiving note. I think it's really important. I'm delighted to know through some of the things we have now read, some of the details of the grant that Councillor Miles assured us and the community that we would not be receiving in April when we voted for a more thorough and comprehensive study on this.
Still conditional.
Pardon?
It's still conditional.
just that you said in April that we would not be receiving it. So I wasn't aware that a deed had been, funding agreement had been signed in February at that meeting, even though we had asked to understand that. So I'm glad to be aware that from the GM, who has said this evening that the scope that we've read here for the first time, some of us councillors have seen it for the first time in the business paper on Thursday. And I'm delighted to hear from the GM that that is flexible and therefore open to this extra suggestion from Councillor Sanderson that we consult more richly together. And I'm grateful to the soccer club for also being enthusiastic about participating in that discussion. I'm hoping we'll come up with some good outcomes. The other reason I think it's really important that we do this richer public consultation and facilitated meeting is that under the plan of management, what I did understand from the previous general manager is that technically this proposal will not need to go to DA. So this consultation will be our opportunity. We might take it to DA, I don't know, but technically it doesn't have to. So I think this is another really good opportunity for the community to work together. And we've seen good constructive community meetings have good outcomes where everyone can find something that we can agree on. And I don't think anyone's saying tonight whether they are for or against one or the other, while some of the speakers have, obviously, but that's not our job as councillors. Our job as councillors is to consider a rich and comprehensive report and the thoughts of the community and best decision we can on their behalf. And if it's taken a couple of extra months, I think it's worth the wait, and I think everyone will be happier with the outcome.
Any further debate? Right or reply, Councillor?
Not required.
Not required. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against, declare it unanimous. Thank you for the speakers. We now move to the next item on the business paper, which is the Sustainability Action Plan update. Is there a motion in relation to the matter? Receive and note. Councillor Collins, Councillor McLaughlin, second. Any debate? Yes, Councillor McLaughlin.
I'll just only to say that it's, you know, a fantastic report. It's showing that we are making good progress on this. But one thing I did want to point out is at the very end of the report, and we don't often look at, oh, we do look at these, but we just tend to skim over them, but it talks about the financial impact assessment, and it says there is a positive financial impact on council's adopted budget. Environmental impact assessment. There is a positive environmental impact on council, arising from council's consideration. The social impact assessment. There is a positive social impact on council arising from council consideration of this matter. Risk assessment. There is no direct or indirect risks. We don't often see that. It's good to see that sustainability is not a drain on council resources, that it's actually a positive and contributing part of what we do as a council. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Is there any further debate? Councillor Collins.
Just, I suppose, on the financial impact assessment. Action number 5, update on the Hunters Hill climate change risk assessment. The consultant has been engaged. What was the funding for that?
Acting General Manager,
I'd have to take that on notice.
We'll take that on notice.
Those details, I can come back to you on that one.
Because it wouldn't make much sense to have a positive financial impact if
It's been taken on notice.
Oh, it is if it creates results and you're actually reducing your outputs. Yeah, so, but I can take it on board to see how that's dealt with.
So does that mean it'll come back in an email?
It will.
I'll email about it. Yep, email to all councillors in the morning.
Right, thank
If you want to take it any further after that, then it's a
that's
notice of motion.
Yep. All good. Any further debate? If not, put the motion. All those in favour? Against, declare that unanimous. We now move on to the next item on the business paper, which is 4.4, licence agreements for 42 and 46 Gladesville Road. Yes, Councillor Miles, you wish to move the motion? Is there a seconder? Councillor Sanderson, is there any debate?
Just a question.
Yes, Councillor Collins.
This is obviously they're happy with the rent.
I assume so. Yes, I must admit I haven't had a discussion with them directly, but the previous agreements were very similar and very minimal the increase.
Okay.
There's no further debate. Put the motion. All those in favour? Against, declare that unanimous. Now move to item 4.5, and I think we have a speaker for this one before we.
Council officer to read it, yeah.
Yep. Could that be read, please, before we deal with the business placemaking grants?
Actually,
Yep.
I'm very excited that council is finally doing something to support businesses, particularly in Boronia Park. The outside of my shop, Skinsational, has looked terrible for so long, while the rest of the area looks fabulous. This grant is going to help me lift the look of the building and hopefully will bring my little patch of Boronia up to the same level as the rest of the businesses. That was Sarah Austin.
Yes, and the next one is joining us by Zoom.
There's no one.
No one on Zoom.
That was Elizabeth Newton, and she's from Wishbone.
And so there's no documentation there. No. And then we have Mr. Matt Williams.
Yep,
and read out.
He's from Dashhound, and he would like to thank the local council for the ongoing support and investment into the businesses and broader community. This grant will allow us to serve and engage the local Hunters Hill community better by creating new and vibrant community programs and services.
Thank you. That concludes the presentations and information that's been read out. There's a motion, Councillor Miles, Councillor Crassoy, to adopt the recommendations. Is there any further discussion? If not, put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare it carried unanimously. We now move on to 4.6, which is leasing of road reserve adjoining 13 Youthella Avenue. And there's a recommendation there. Councillor Miles and Councillor McLaughlin's the seconder. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare it carried. We now move to item 4.7, which is land adjoining 3 Wandella Avenue. Councillor Miles has moved the recommendation. Councillor Collins has seconded it. Is there any discussion? If not, put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare it carried unanimously. We now move to item 4.8, which is summary of council's investments as at the 31st of May 2021. It's to receive and note. Is there a motion to that effect? Councillor Sanderson, is there a seconder? Councillor Collins, is there any discussion, debate? If not, put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare that carried unanimously. We now move to item number 4.9, which is a policy in relation to protection and maintenance of curb and gutters and sandstone elements. There's a motion there to receive a note and an additional two. Is there a motion to that effect? Councillor Crassoy, Councillor Sanderson has seconded that motion. Councillor Miles, do you wish to speak?
Just very briefly, and it goes to something. Well,
does the mover wish to speak?
No, it's fine.
Okay, Councillor Miles.
This is just simply a reporting issue with the financial impact assessment, focusing on sustainability. There's no direct financial impact of councils results report. Probably we have some figures in there for the consultant's report. There would be a direct financial impact, surely.
Mr. Acting General Manager.
Yeah, you can look at that two ways. Yes, there'd be a direct financial impact because it's more expensive to replace with the sandstone. I mean, that's fair comment. But that said, we're only going to have a limited budget. We'll only spend a limited budget, so it's not going to actually have a detrimental effect as such because we won't spend more than what we've got in the budget. Yeah, just won't do as much.
Is there any further debate? Councillor Collins,
can we just get that information though? I think it's more transparent if we have these financial impact assessments. Sometimes perhaps they just cut and paste, but we should actually have a look at.
Okay, the acting general.
But is it in any of the documentation in here? I'll circulate it, councillors.
We'll take that on notice and provide the information. Any further questions, debate?
Just niggle.
Put the motion, all those in favour, against, declare it carried unanimously. Now move on to item 10. Yes, councillor Miles.
I've circulated an alternate motion, Mr Mayor. Would you like me to read it?
Yes, so we can see if there's a seconder.
Sorry. Number one, the report be received and noted. That number two, the council, as authorised by the Minister of Planning, Infrastructure, Environment, appoint Leslie Finn as chair, Peter Tomasetti SC and Professor Peter Webber as alternate chairs from 1st of July 2021 to 29th of February 2024. The council appoint the following independent experts: Sheridan Burke, Chris Young, David Logan and Rod Edgar. Number four, the council appoint the following community representatives: Dr. Meredith Shield, South Ward, Virginia Wise, South Ward, Philip Hart, North Ward, Richard Quinn, North Ward. That the proposed chairs, independent experts and community representatives as listed above. Items 3 and 4 be appointed from 1st of July to the 29th of February 2022. That letters be sent, number 6, sorry, that letters be sent to all proposed chairs, experts and community representatives of the Hunters Hill Local Planning Panel confirming their appointments. Number 7, that the proposed members accept their appointment. The proposed members accept their appointment to Hunters Hill Local Planning Panel in writing, so in doing so agree to abide by the code of conduct for local planning panel members. Number 8, remuneration to be paid to chairs and independent experts in accordance with the provisions of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act of 1979. That number 9, the remuneration rate of $600 plus GST per meeting is paid to each community representative participating in the panel. Number 10, that the letter of thanks be sent to the outgoing chair, Mr. Lloyd QC, for his contribution on the Hunters Hill Local Planning Panel over the last 3 years. And number 11, that a letter be sent to the Department of Planning, Infrastructure and Environment informing them of the chairs and alternate chairs were appointed for a period from 1st of July 2021 to the 29th of February 2024, and that the experts and community representatives were appointed from the period of 1st July 2021 to the 28th of February 2022.
Can I just ask one quick point of clarification? In 5, you say that the proposed...
Sorry, the one I sent through by email is correct. The one I handed around was not amended correctly, and I just...
So the chairs is in?
Yes,
Yeah,
so that the...
Just so the minutes are correct, yeah.
So that the version I sent through electronically is correct in that one.
Okay.
Okay, so there's 29 February 2022 and 28 February 2022.
Yeah, so if I could...
That's all correct,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So essentially, we would be appointing, as per the Minister of Planning's direction, the chair and the alternate chairs till the end of term, which is the maximum period. And then we'd be appointing essentially the independent, the community representatives and the expert representatives up until February 2022.
Is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor McLaughlin? Do you wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Miles?
Yeah, just to say that it's usual, obviously, after elections that expressions of interest are sent out to community members. It happens with CAP, it happens with most committees that council put out. In fact, I can't think of one where we haven't done that at the start of the council term. So this allows us to be consistent with the ministerial directive to reappoint the chairs to the end of term, but also for council to undertake that expression of interest process once the elections have happened in September, and there might be members of the panel that don't want to sit for 6 years or are doing different things. I can think of one in particular that might be doing something different. But it's just normal process that we go through a council, so I don't know why we do deviate from that.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Councillor McLaughlin.
I'd like to ask the question probably through you, Mr. Meta, the Acting General Manager. Are we obliged to appoint the community representatives at this point under state legislation, or?
Mr. Acting General Manager.
I'll just ask the director through you, Mayor. We are obliged because if we don't by the 1st of July, we'll have no panel. So this resolution, this amendment to the resolution allows us to operate till February of next year. So it's a 6-month window. But the minute we have to adopt the panel chairs under legislation.
So there's nothing, so we're not breaking anything by just doing it for 6 months.
Not at all.
Doing it
No.
again.
But
Okay.
we double checked with the department today as well.
Oh, great. Yep.
It's an opportunity to refresh or see how the panel is working.
Yeah.
Any further debate, councillor Collins?
Yeah, just first a question through you, Mayor, to the General Manager. It's come up a couple of times where says the community representatives are paid $600 per meeting. But by resolution that I brought a while ago, they're actually paid $500, which is the minimum. And there has been no increase. Has the rules set by the regulations, has that increased to 600 from 500?
Mr. Acting General Manager. Yes.
Through you, Mayor. No, that hasn't changed. I double checked it and I remember that resolution for myself. Can I double check it again? If there's an error, we'll change it. But I remember I went through the past resolution, so we'll double check that. If it's 500, we'll make it 500.
Well, let's I've actually got the email from Lisa, so if we can just change that to 500.
500, yeah, if that's the case. But I did double.
I'm happy to accept that.
If that's what is happening at the moment.
Councillor Collins has moved that and seconded by Councillor McLaughlin, and that's.
I think it's incorporated.
Yeah, okay, so that's now incorporated in the motion. Okay.
Part number 9 should say 600, 500.
500, okay. Any further debate, councillor Sanderson?
Yes, I have questions if I can. My recollection, I mean, we went through an exercise like this in February 2018. At that point in time, the chairs were appointed by Minister Paul. Has that changed?
No, that's still the case, but we have to ratify.
Have no choice in the selection.
That's correct. And as you can see through you, Mayor, the attached letter to the Mayor appointing them and direction by the Minister of the day.
The only flexibility we have is in the other panel members.
And is there still a panel for those to be selected from, as there was at that time?
Yes. Yeah.
One thing I might suggest.
Well, do you wish to speak to the motion or to move an amendment?
I could move an amendment. I think that Councillor Morris will probably be amenable.
Do you want to get to your feet when you're
yes, Mr. Mayor.
Speaking on these issues?
Is in terms of the date that you extend to, I wonder whether it would be prudent rather than simply February. I think you're saying 20 up, make that the 31st of March rather than the 20 or the last day of February.
Why?
The only reason being that we would have to, I presume, go through a process like that. I would imagine it would be in 2022 rather than the current year. It just gives us a little bit of time for expressions of interest and the process of actually appointing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, are the staff comfortable with that timing?
Through you,
Acting General Manager.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, if it's left at February, then we'll have to go out in October, November. Looking if that's council's wish to seek alternate community representatives or just to get a pool to adopt from again. It may be if we don't go out till February, it might get a little bit tight to try and, you don't want to do these things in January. Everyone's on holidays and nothing starts till after Australia Day. So you might want to just give yourself another 4 weeks. And I don't think that really affects you're still giving them a considerable amount of time, almost 2 full years until the terms finish again.
So just a question.
There's Councillor Collins.
Is there any reason why we haven't actually gone out to consultation on this community rep?
Through you, Mayor. The reasoning is basically, as the report states, the LPP is running well. The expertise on the panel through the experts are doing falling in line with our LEP and DCP, and they were vetted through the councillors back in the day, and that's why I attached the CVs. And that's the reasons. And the reason also was that the department didn't give enough time for us to consider this through the council because the time's running out in July.
And I'll speak
for
against-
reappointments.
I'll speak against the amendment then. The amendment of the amendment.
No, wait a second. Was
Okay,
that an
I think
amendment you
get
moved
done
or
as
a
soon as
question?
Yeah.
Look, I'll put that as an amendment, which I hope Councillor Miles would accept.
Is there a seconder to the amendment?
Done as soon as possible.
That lapses. Debate on the motion.
I don't think so.
No. Okay, any further, put the motion, all those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. Yes. Now move to the next item on the business paper, which is development applications determined under delegated authority in May 2021, and that's item 4.11. Is there a motion in regard? Councillor McLaughlin. Is there a second? Councillor Prasoi. Is there any debate or questions? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare that carried unanimously. Item 4.12 is a report on legal matters to May 2021. Is there a motion in relation to receive and note? Councillor Sanderson, Councillor McLaughlin is the seconder. Is there any discussion? Speak. If not, put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare it carried unanimously. We now move to item 4.13, which is minutes of the Conservation Advisory Panel held on the 19th of May 2021. There's a motion to receive and note. Is there a recommendation to receive and note? Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Sanderson is the seconder. Any debate? If not, put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare it carried unanimously. Item 4.14, minutes of the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee held on the 19th of May 2021. Councillor Collins.
Yeah, I'll briefly.
Wish to move the recommendation?
I do.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Sanderson. Yes, Councillor Collins.
I just want to draw attention on page 286, item 3.1 of the minutes. Basically, that was regarding referral to the audit committee when the investment guidelines were breached. Now, I understand that there's been some work, as was discussed at the committee, with the new investment manager, the investment advisor, about how that might be mitigated. But at this point, I'm not satisfied that those risks have been dealt with. There needs to be more. The process needs to be become a little bit more rigid so that these things can't happen. We ended up having millions of dollars of our assets outside of our adopted investment policy. We've got to have a policy, we've got to abide by it. And in order to do that, we need to have the right structures in place, the right processes, so that it doesn't happen again. So whilst it was passed at the, it was brought to the audit committee, I understand it's going to come back again. We're going to see further report on it, because at this stage, the circumstances that allowed it to happen haven't been dealt with, so it could happen again. So just wanted to.
Is there any further debate? If not, put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare it carried unanimously. We now move to item 4.15, which deals with the minutes of the Bushland Management Advisory Committee to receive and note. Is there Councillor Sanderson? Is there a second? Councillor McLaughlin. Any debate? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare that carried unanimously. We now move to item 4.16, which is the minutes of the Access, Inclusion and Seniors Advisory Group held on the 8th of March. Yes, Councillor.
I'll move, but I'd like to move with a further part that has been left out of the report.
Yes. Would like to tell us what?
Yes, I'll move that the report be received and noted.
Yep.
But there was a recommendation of the committee that didn't appear in the recommendation, and that is that council right to Barbara Dorsch AM, to thank her for over 20 years of service to the community and council in various roles, including many years of chairing the former Access Advisory Committee, and then most recently as a member of the Access, Inclusion and Seniors Advisory Committee. I've got the, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to do it electronically.
I think it'd be useful if you could hand that up.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll get that sorted.
Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Crassoy? Is there any debate? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare it carried unanimously. That takes us to the 4.17 on page 300, which is the minutes of the Access, Inclusion and Seniors Advisory Group held on the 7th of June. Is there a motion in relation to the receive and note? Yes, Councillor Sanderson, is there a seconder to that? Councillor Crassoy, any debate? If not, put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare it carried. That moves us on to 4.18, which is the minutes of the Huntersville Art Advisory Committee. To receive and yes, Councillor McLaughlin, is there a seconder? Councillor Miles, any debate? If not, put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare that carried unanimously. That brings us to item 4.19, additional ordinary meeting of council proposed for the 26th of July. Yes, Councillor Miles.
Question, Mr. Mayor, I guess through you to the General Manager, maybe to Corporate Services. Is this, because we don't believe that there's going to be adequate time to do the annual reporting?
For the additional.
Yeah, for the additional meeting.
Mr. Acting General Manager.
Yes. So strict, and then I'll add some words as well.
Yes, it does give us a little bit of extra time to report on the delivery program for last financial year, and we'll also use that opportunity to confirm carryover funds for capital projects as we did last year around August. We only have one more meeting before the local government elections, so it's just an additional meeting to present those IPNR documents that's required.
And I'll just add that the council end of term report needs to go up in July. It can't go up in August for a special meeting because it's then seen as part of electoral collateral, and that's directly from the Department of Local Government. If we can get everything up to our normal meeting, then we won't have a meeting. We just need a bit of backup. And I'm conscious of the criticism of other meetings that I've attended where people say there's too much on the agenda.
Yeah.
So so it's a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Acting General Manager. Why can't we just have one meeting on the 26th? You think there'll be too much?
I just think I really think we should just give ourselves some space. Let's try and get it all through on the 19th. We'll work as hard as we can, but if we have an issue with that date, let me know, and we can have a discussion whether there's an alternate date. But I'll just try to give the council a little bit of flexibility.
Councillor Collins.
Through you, Mayor, the end of term report, I haven't seen one before. Is that, if that's intended to come to the last meeting?
Correct.
And when would we receive that?
In the business paper.
Okay, and that's not a report that is. I'm conscious of it being amended and fussed over quite a lot. Is it possible we could get that a few weeks before then?
Well, councillors, we'll get it to you as early as we can, but I'll be saying it's a council officer's report coming to you.
It shouldn't be amended?
No, I'm not saying it shouldn't be amended, but if you have issues with it, let me know. But I'll be playing very straight back with that report, and we're coming to you as what we've done, how we've done it, and then you adopt it or do whatever you want with it.
Okay. So I think it's reasonable that we have a fallback position if we're unsuccessful in completing all the papers on the 19th. So with that, is there a mover of the motion? Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Sanderson, seconder. Any further discussion? It's only a contingency. All those in favour, against, declare it carried. That brings us to a late item that relates to 20, which is the Nelson Parade Remediation Traffic Management Plan. Now, that was circulated. Yes, Councillor Miles. Okay, is there a seconder? Councillor Collins, any debate? The motion, all those in favour, against, declare that carried. That now brings us to 6.1, which we have a speaker for. Yes, Councillor Prosser.
Sorry, we have a speaker.
Yes, we do. Dr. Sharp, do you wish to address council on 6.1? Yes, you're very, your patience is.
Well, I spent a lot of time thinking about this.
Okay.
So,
3 minutes.
right. Hunters Hill Trust certainly supports the replacement, many of the actions envisaged for Victory Park. In particular, the long absent junior playground. We'd be pleased to see public toilets there, improved connection to Gladesville Road shops. It's one of my favourite little parks, and all these things make perfect sense. But we're wary of the idea of activating the park. And the problem is that I've spent a long time on the internet and in various dictionaries trying to find a meaning for the word activate. And it seems to me that the best way of understanding activate is to remember reading Alice in Wonderland, when she found in Wonderland that a word could mean anything the person using it intended. Activate, to me, most of the definitions I find relate to making things radioactive or dealing with sewage by fermenting it. Activate is not a good word to use. It's a jargon word. I'm sure it means something to certain people, but it doesn't work for a general public. So I urge you not to use the word activate in this context. So getting on with things, we dispute the statement that the park is currently underutilised, while we welcome ways of making it more attractive, and perhaps we can bring more people in here by the various measures suggested, but it shouldn't be at the expense of spoiling the gentle, quiet aura of the park, which is valued so much by the people who use it currently, in particular, older people who come over there from the aged care facilities, or simply retired people who are living in the vicinity. We welcome the very detailed commitment to public consultation, although the timeline seems a little short if the consultation is going to be genuine and not just, as we heard described earlier, sticking post-it notes on a board. We hope that in the consultation, there'll be a strong, we believe, there'll be a strong message to retain the name of Fig Tree Park. Fig Tree Park is in the Fig Tree area. It's near Fig Tree Road and Fig Tree Bridge. It is Fig Tree. I think it would be appalling to change the name for no valid reason. Which reminds me of when, after a big battle, we stopped Hunters Hill High School being closed, and there was a very strong move then to change the name, the uniform, and the badge. And a lot of people, one sitting over here, are proud of their school, and I don't think we should discard things just because they've been there a long time. To persuade the New South Wales government to grant Hunters Hill access to 4.75 million, we'd expected there would have been some prior consultation with the community about what the money was going to be used for. We expected to find drawings and plans of what might be proposed there. But now that we've seen the proposal for detailed community consultation, we can see that maybe respectfully waiting to hear the community's views before starting work on designs, layout. It's not a bad idea, but it has to be a proper consultation. We're very critical of some of the forms of consultation in the last year or two. It's got to be a proper consultation where people can put forward their ideas, and I'd suggest that the ideas should be made available as they're received. I think it's a 2-month period that's allowed, not just a report at the end of the time, so that people can consider them. We notice that the guidelines for this grant are quite specific in that the funds can only be used to create or enhance parks, and that they're intended as compensation for allowing and accelerating nearby development. We ask council to explain what additional development council has committed to in exchange for this grant. We're delighted to read that council aims to protect heritage cottages on Gladesville Road and is committed to increasing the existing green space. I think it says they're also going to protect the croquet club. But we look forward to seeing how this can be achieved in the light of the scope, saying that the proposal will not affect or upgrade or redevelopment of the council controlled properties along Gladesville Road, while at the same time, we have sitting in the background what's becoming the property strategy, which suggests there are going to be quite extensive changes to these areas. I particularly was a bit concerned that the budget for the project includes laying 500 square metres of concrete. That's a bit inconsistent with the preservation of green space. So there's some bitty comments. I think the next stage is to involve the community in this consultation, and I look forward to that.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Are there any questions of Dr. Sharp? If not, thank you very much for your attendance this evening. Yes, Councillor Crassoy, do you wish to ask a question?
Put the motion.
Put the motion?
I'll move the motion, yeah.
You move the motion, and second by Councillor Miles. Is there any debate? Yes, Councillor Crassoy, do you wish to speak to it?
Oh, could I consider, Councillor Miles, sorry, I wasn't quick enough to stand up then, that you consider the point to it. And I'll explain why I'm suggesting it after I've said it. That point 3 be that the working title and project continue to be referred to as Fig Tree Park in all reporting and consultation.
Hey, is you happy with that? Yes, that's now in motion. Is there any further debate? If not, put the motion. All those in favour, against, declare it carried. That now brings us to the end of the open council process. We now move into committee of the whole, Councillor Miles and Councillor Lachlan. Any debate? Put the motion. All those in favour, declare that unanimous. Thank you for your attendance, Dr. Sharp, and those that are watching online. We will now go into committee of the whole for a moment to deal with 2 items, and then we'll return to tell people of the outcome of that process. So we now terminate our